Notice!
Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. Who else besides me here loves Doctor Who? Doctor Who has been on television since 1963 and has entertained and scared audiences around the world for years, celebrating its 50th anniversary and coming up to its 60th, featuring many monsters including the Daleks, the Cybermen and many more, and various actors playing the iconic character. The show is now into its 12th series, with the already returned Master and Jadoon, and an upcoming return for the Cybermen. So it's needless to say that Doctor Who is a huge part of British culture and a huge British icon. And with how popular Doctor Who has gotten in this over 50-year run, who else besides me wouldn't love to see a Lego movie version of Doctor Who? Since we'd already gotten the Lego movie, the Lego Batman movie, the Lego Ninjago movie, and the Lego Movie 2 the second part, and the possible upcoming Lego Batman movie 2 and possible Billion Brick Race movie coming up soon, then who's to say that we couldn't have a Lego Doctor Who movie based on the iconic TV series? Of course this would have to be done with permission from the BBC themselves, since they own the rights to the show. But if they could get the rights to use the Daleks in the Lego Batman movie, I see no reason why they could get the rights to do a parody movie of Doctor Who with permission from the BBC. Now, making a Lego movie based on the Doctor Who franchise could be quite a debate, since the show is owned by the BBC and the Lego movie franchise is currently owned by Warner Brothers and soon to be owned by Universal. But here are some of the ideas I have for a Lego Doctor Who movie. Ever since I bought the LEGO Ideas Doctor Who TARDIS set, bought the LEGO Dimensions video game with the Doctor Who level pack, and watched all the LEGO movies that have come out so far, I've come up with my own ideas of how the Doctor Who LEGO movie could work. My main idea for the movie would be a multi-Doctor story where we'd see every single Doctor show up, from William Hartnell to Patrick Troughton to John Pertwee to Tom Baker to Peter Davison to Colin Baker to Sylvester McCoy to Paul McGann to the late Sir John Hurt to Christopher Eccleston, to David Tennant, to Matt Smith, to Peter Capaldi, and to Jodie Whittaker herself. And since Jodie is the current Doctor at the moment, I think it would make sense for her to be the main character of the Doctor Who LEGO movie. One idea for this I have is that the opening of the movie shows with a clip of each Doctor fighting various villains. Like, say, the first Doctor fighting against the Daleks, John Pertwee's Doctor fighting against the Silurians, Tom Baker and the Zygons, and David Tennant the Sontarans, and Matt Smith possibly the Silents, and Peter Capaldi the Cybermen, which I think would make sense since they're his favourite villains, and perhaps have Jodie Whittaker facing off against the Master. It's just random ideas that I think would fit with the various Doctors and the actors who've portrayed them, and how popular their villains were at the time. And then through some weird wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey thing, all Doctors would get joined up together for this great adventure that involves all of them having to save the universe from a great threat. And their adventure would have them facing off many classic monsters, including the Daleks, the Cybermen, the Sontarans, the Autons, the Zygons, Davros, the Silurians, and all sorts of villains from Doctor Who's 50-odd year history. For me, the whole idea of bringing every Doctor Who villain together for a movie plot is very similar to the Lego Batman movie, when you have all the DC villains together and all of the Phantom Zone villains together consisting of different franchises. And of course it would be a callback to the Pandorica Opens and the Time of the Doctor. And their adventures would take them to every corner of the galaxy, trying to find out what's going wrong with the universe and how to fix everything. And on their journeys they would come across all the many villains that I've mentioned before, who would give them a sort of hint as to who's behind the whole plot. And then about halfway through the story, it would all come down to the Master being behind all this, along with his previous incarnations, which I think would be fitting since we got every single Doctor for this plot. So it would make sense to me to have every single Master from the past, present and future come in too. the Master would somehow make an alliance with all these villains to help him conquer the universe, only to leave them in the dust once he got what he wants. And through learning lessons about teamwork and getting along with each other, since the Doctors have been known to banter with their few incarnations, then all the Doctors would eventually team up to defeat all these villains and the Masters and save the universe from total destruction. And that's my main idea for a main plot of the movie. And I have so many ideas on how these various monsters and characters could work out. Like, part of me really wants to see all the original actors come back to voice the characters, as well as some various actors doing impressions of actors that have passed away. Like someone who could do a Patrick Troughton voice and someone who could do a John Pertwee similar voice. And obviously get someone to try and do a John Hurt voice, since he passed away as well. Or at least if they aren't on board with getting all the classic actors in to do the voices, I'd say at least get actors who can do pretty good impressions of the actors. Like, I've seen a clip of Dead Rins with them doing Tom Baker's Doctor Who living with the Cybermen, and the guy that does it does a pretty good impression of Tom Baker.
It is true. The Time Lord is forbidden from interfering directly with the affairs of other life forms.
So I think probably hiring him would be really good if they couldn't get Tom Baker to do it. I'm not 100% sure which of the two would work, either bringing the original actors back or getting actors to do impressions of them would work, but either one would be pretty good in my opinion. But one thing I say they should definitely do is bring in Nicholas Briggs to voice the Daleks, Cybermen and the Jadoon, since that's what he's best known for in the show. And on the subject of the Daleks, I say that we use two various types of Daleks. The Dalek that we got in LEGO Dimensions, and the Daleks that we got to see in the LEGO Batman movie, bringing two Dalek factions together. And all the many characters and villain designs I feel would be really appropriate to have used LEGO Dimension designs, especially with the Cybermen and all the Doctors, and Davros. And I would also have the movie open and close in a similar way to the LEGO Ninjago movie, with some kids going to this LEGO convention, meeting up with this guy building Doctor Who LEGO sets, and he ends up telling them a story about how the Doctor saved the universe, which goes into the story. So it would sort of blend into the continuity of the LEGO Ninjago movie, as well as showing other LEGO worlds out there besides Ninjago and Finn's basement. Having this story take place from someone else's point of view and imagination with LEGOs would just add to the whole wide universe that the LEGO Ninjago movie created. A LEGO world beyond Finn's basement. It's just a crazy idea I have, but I think it could work. And similar to how the LEGO Batman movie made tons of references to the Caped Crusader himself, I think it would make sense for the LEGO Doctor Who movie to throw in tons of references to his 50-odd year history, like throwing a few nods to the classic series, and a lot of nods from the new series as well. Just a great way to make many references to the show's history. And for the sake of continuity with Finn's LEGO world, here's the idea I have for a LEGO Doctor Who movie that would take place within Finn's universe. Ever since I've been playing LEGO Dimensions, I always used to team up the Doctor with Unikitty. So the idea came to me to have Unikitty being the Doctor's companion in this movie. Like with Unikitty, the plot would pretty much be the same as I'd listed before, except have Finn and Bianca go to the convention and meet up with the Doctor Who LEGO builder, and him noticing that they bought along their Unikitty minifigure, so he decides to incorporate her into the story. And just to show some continuity to Unikingdom like they did in the LEGO Movie 2, have the Daleks invade Unikingdom and surround Unikitty, only to have the Doctor intervene and save her, bringing her along on his travels. While some people may not want to see Unikitty in a LEGO Doctor Who movie, I think it'd be quite a fun thing to add to it, since I used to play as Unikitty and the Doctor in LEGO Dimensions. I mean, it worked for me when I did it in Second Co, so why not do it for the big screen? And it would just connect Doctor Who to Finn's LEGO world. And if we're gonna do that, I'd say probably give a cameo to General Sweet Mayhem from the LEGO Movie 2. Just like say have one of the Doctors passing through the Sistar system and bumping into General Sweet Mayhem and saying hi. And perhaps have the Doctor talk about how Rex attempted to use his TARDIS to build his time-travelling spaceship. Just adding to the continuity of the movies. And plus, I think it'd be really adorable to see Unikitty reacting to the various monsters she comes across, like the Daleks and the Cybermen and so on and so forth. And I would absolutely love to see what her reaction would be to meeting K9. Yeah, include K9 in the movie too, since he's iconic. I just think that Unikitty would be a great side character to be with the Doctor and interact with his/her adventures. And it would just be really fun to see how she reacts to the different worlds the Doctors visit. Just throwing in her Unikitty charm and probably having that thing where they did in the Lego Movie 2 where she's trying to get back on camera every minute she can. Like with the intermission scene and the end scene where she sticks her head in the corner of the screen. That may sound better inside my head, but I just think it would be a really nice way to connect the Doctor Who Lego world to Finn's Lego world from the previous films. Either do it without her, making it similar to the Lego Ninjago movie where there's various Lego worlds outside of Finn's basement, or connecting it to Finn's basement like they did with the Lego Batman movie. It's just two ideas I have that I think might work. But I don't know, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. And speaking of various Lego characters like Unikitty and Sweet Mayhem, I think it'd be really cool to have other space and time travelling Lego characters show up. Like I'd really love to see the Doctor interacting with Doc Brown from Back to the Future, and possibly throwing in E.T. and perhaps other alien themes that Lego have done. Hell, they could even give Benny the 1980s something space guy a cameo. Just a cool way to show the various histories of space that Lego's had over the years. So those are my two ideas for a Lego Doctor Who movie in the Lego Movie franchise. And it might not happen since the BBC owns Doctor Who and Warner Brothers / Universal doesn't. But it's an interesting idea for me, and it would be a dream come true if it did happen in the future. These ideas may not work outside of my head, but I think that they could work if done with the right writers and the right team. And of course they would have to get permission from the BBC to do it first before they go on ahead and do it. But it's just my idea for a Lego Doctor Who movie that could or could not happen in the future. But whether or not it does happen, it's still a fun idea to think of, in my opinion. And if you guys have any other ideas for future Lego movies, then let me know what they are in the comments section below. So a Lego Doctor Who movie is something that I would love to see in the future, but may not happen. But it's still great to come up with these ideas and just throw them out there and see what people think. And if whoever owns the Lego Movie at the moment, be it Warner Brothers or Universal, ever takes this idea into consideration, then I certainly hope that they use my ideas and references as an idea for their plot. But whether or not they do a Doctor Who Lego Movie in the future, we'll have to wait and see. But it's fun to come up with so many ideas and plans for a movie, and it's just great to throw them out there. And if you have ideas for future Lego movies of your own, throw them out there and see what other people think of them. I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks.
Live from Bristol City, it's Dalek44's 500 video! We have a great show for you tonight, with laughs, reviews, and the odd fart joke maybe here and there. And now introducing the man who needs no introduction, but got one anyway, Dalek44!
Thank you. Thank you all. We've got a great looking audience tonight. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now you're all aware that this is my 500th video, right? Well, tonight I have something very special in store for everyone here. You ready for this? A review of Todd Phillips' Joker. Yes, I felt that this movie was the perfect way to celebrate getting 500 videos. Because, let's be honest, that's quite an achievement, right? Well, we got some great laughs for you tonight as I review Todd Phillips' masterpiece, Joker. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. How's that, guys? Yeah. Oh, this is quite an achievement for me. 500 videos, man. Who thought I would have gotten this high? And all my fans out there have all made it possible. If it weren't for them, where would I be today? Yeah. That'll be a really kick-ass way to celebrate my 500th video. Whew, speaking of which, I gotta get to work on it.
Notice!
Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. We're all familiar with Batman the superhero, aren't we? And if we are, we're just as familiar with his arch-enemy, the Joker. The Joker, in all his years, has become one of the most iconic DC Comics villains of all time, as well as one of the most iconic comic book villains of all time, having several actors portrayed the character in their own way, from the wacky and campy Cesar Romero in the 60s Adam West show, the crazy and scary Jack Nicholson from the Tim Burton film, the scary and also really funny Mark Hamill from the animated series, the scary and chaotic Heath Ledger from The Dark Knight, Zach Galifianakis' super obsessed arch-enemy from the Lego Batman movie, and the gangster Joker that Jared Leto played in Suicide Squad.
You suck!
And many other actors that I don't really have time to mention here. But it's needless to say that the Joker has become one of the most iconic villains in DC comic books over the years. And the most recent incarnation of the Clown Prince of Crime is Joaquin Phoenix from Todd Phillips' 2019 movie Joker. Joker is a 2019 American psychological thriller film directed and produced by Todd Phillips, who co-wrote the screenplay with Scott Silver. The film stars Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker and provides a possible origin story for the character. When this movie was first announced, people were like,
Oh, hey guys.
"Ah, jeez, it's the Hollywood system." And now that they've seen it, they're like... And this was a movie that a lot of people really didn't want because the Joker's origin has always been a mystery throughout the DC Comics history. And it's been a mystery in a lot of the adaptations of the film. The best example being Heath Ledger's Joker from The Dark Knight, as we have no idea what drove him to crime. But this one takes an interesting look at the possible reasons for him turning to crime in the first place. Being an original film not based on any of the comic books, is Joker a faithful adaptation to the Clown Prince of Crime? Let's have a look-see. In 1981, party clown and aspiring stand-up comedian Arthur Fleck lives with his mother, Penny, in Gotham City. Arthur suffers from a medical disorder that causes him to laugh at inappropriate times. He depends on social services for medication. After a gang of children attacks Arthur in the alley, his co-worker Randall gives him a gun for protection. During that time, Arthur also meets his neighbour, single mother Sophie Dunham, and invites her to his upcoming stand-up routine at the nightclub. While entertaining at a children's hospital, Arthur's gun falls out of his pocket. Randall lies to management that Arthur bought the gun himself and Arthur is fired. On the subway, still in his clown makeup, Arthur is beaten by 3 drunken Wayne Enterprises businessmen. He shoots 2 in self-defense and executes the 3rd. The murders are condemned by billionaire mayoral candidate Thomas Wayne, who calls those envious of more successful people clowns. Demonstrations against Gotham's rich begin, with protests donning clown masks in Arthur's image. Funding cuts shutter the social service program, leaving Arthur without his medication. Later on, Sophie attends Arthur's stand-up routine, which goes poorly. He laughs uncontrollably and has difficulty delivering his jokes. Popular talk show host Murray Franklin, played by Robert De Niro, mocks Arthur by showing clips of his comedy routine on the show. Arthur intercepts a letter written by Penny to Thomas, alleging that he is Thomas's illegitimate son. He berates his mother for hiding the truth. Arthur goes to Wayne Manor, where he meets Thomas's young son, Bruce Wayne, but flees after a scuffle with the family butler, Alfred Pennyworth. Arthur's journey to find out if Thomas Wayne really is his father or not all leads to some unfortunate reveals about his past, which causes him to suffer from his mental illness and finally snap, becoming the Crown Prince of Crime, the Joker. And murder, chaos, and anarchy ensues. So what's my thoughts on this origin story about the Joker that came from the mind of Tom Phillips? It's the best film from 2019 in my opinion. This movie took everyone by surprise when it was released in cinemas, with two sides of the argument for this movie. One side of it saying that this movie could influence violence in the world, while others see it as showing the cause of violence. So while a lot of people were really worried about people who have seen this movie going out causing a lot of violence in the world, all I've seen people do because of this movie is imitate the famous stair dance scene in the movie, either in the exact same location where it was filmed, or at a random bunch of steps where they live. So needless to say, this movie's left quite an impact on comic book fans and movie fans in general. The Joker's origin has always been a mystery to everyone who's ever read the Batman comic books. It's even been a mystery to the Joker himself. But this movie takes an interesting turn to see what a possible motivation could have been for his turn to crime. The main character of the movie, Arthur Fleck, played by Joaquin Phoenix, is a mentally ill, improvised stand-up comedian discarded by society, whose history of abuse causes him to become a nihilistic criminal. Joaquin Phoenix's take on the Joker is so superb and very unique as well, because it's the first Joker that you really feel sorry for. And this is the most sympathetic version of the Clown Prince of Crime I've ever seen. Whereas most versions of the character is really unsympathetic and you just love to hate him. But this guy, you really feel sorry for him throughout the movie. Having seen this guy get beat up and disregarded by society so many times throughout the movie just makes us be on his side, even though you know he's doing terrible things. Like the scene where he shoots the three Wayne Enterprises employees. If they hadn't included the first 30 minutes of how bad his life is going, we wouldn't have been able to sympathise with him as much. But seeing how bad he had it makes us side with him. So this movie achieved the impossible for me, making the Joker a sympathetic character that we sympathise and feel sorry for.
You don't listen to you. I don't think you ever really can. You just ask the same questions every week. How's your job? Are you having any negative thoughts? All I have are negative thoughts. But you don't listen anyway.
There's Murray Franklin, played by Robert De Niro, a talk show host who plays role in Arthur's downfall. He runs the talk show Live with Murray Franklin, which was one of Arthur's only pleasures in life. De Niro himself has described his role as paying homage to his character from the 1983 film The King of Comedy, directed by Martin Scorsese. And you could just tell that Robert De Niro is having a ton of fun playing this comedian. I especially love the moments between him and Joaquin Phoenix throughout the film. It's like these two were just made to be on screen together, and I really hope that they cast these two in more films together. It would be a great dynamic to see them play two different characters in other films together. When I first heard that Robert De Niro was going to be in the movie, I immediately assumed he was going to be like a crime boss or something, because that's what he's usually known for when he's in movies. Sophie Drummond, played by Zazie Beetz, is a single mother and Arthur's love interest. Throughout the film we get this feeling that they have a romantic relationship with each other, and it really shows throughout the film as Arthur invites her to a first stand-up comedian act, snogs her after he murders the three Wayne Enterprises employees. She goes to watch his comedy act and he walks her home. And she even comforts him while they're in the hospital when Penny Fleck has a heart attack. But by the end of the film, we learn that their whole love relationship was just in Arthur's head. And the movie plays really well at switching between what's really going on in reality and what's going on in Arthur's mind. So it makes it hard to tell which is which. Even Arthur found it hard to tell which was which, because everything that was going on in his head just seemed very real to him. And just to see that his relationship with Sophie was all in his mind is just heartbreaking. And it adds to his downfall to become Joker. And because a lot of Sophie's scenes was all in Arthur's fantasy, we don't know if she's actually the way she was in the fantasies or if she was a different way in reality. It just leaves you to fill in the blanks yourself.
I used to think that my life was a tragedy, but now I realize it's a fucking comedy.
Arthur's mentally and physically ill mother, Penny Fleck, played by Frances Conroy, was a former worker for Thomas Wayne, and she claimed that Arthur was Thomas's son. Penny was another one of those parts in Arthur's life which keeps him from going insane. But all that changes when Arthur finds out that she lied to him for all these years, making him believe that they really were mother and son. But you can't really blame Penny for that because of her mental illness. She's convinced herself that that's the way it is. And we sympathise with that because we all know someone in our lives who's had the same sort of mental illness. Someone who's told themselves a certain thing and then becomes convinced that it's real. So it really makes us sympathise with both Arthur and Penny at the end of the film. And there's Thomas Wayne, played by Brett Cullen, a billionaire playboy running for mayor of Gotham. Unlike in the comics, Thomas plays a role in the Joker's origins and is less sympathetic than traditional incarnations. The way Thomas Wayne is performed in this movie makes him look like a kind of Donald Trump sort of person. Someone who's running for a big political placement and gets a lot of people hating him because of the things he says. Some people could describe him as a sort of Donald Trump type character. A politician who would say nasty things about people and then try to apologise, but the apology doesn't sound very apologetic. It's just very rare to see this kind of version of Thomas Wayne. And even though Arthur sort of sparks this rebellion against the wealthy in Gotham, Thomas Wayne made it worse with his comments on TV. So in a way, Thomas Wayne is as much to blame for the riots as Arthur was. Arthur may have started it, but Thomas Wayne made it worse.
I don't need you to tell me lies. I know it seems strange. I don't mean to make you uncomfortable. I don't know why everyone is so rude. I don't know why you are. I don't want anything from you. Maybe a little bit of warmth. Maybe a hug, Dad. How about just a little bit of fucking decency? What is it with you people?
Other characters include Bruce Wayne, Thomas's son, who becomes the Joker's archenemy Batman as an adult. And that scene where Arthur meets Bruce for the first time is just an amazing scene. I just watch it saying, in a few years' time these two are going to become arch enemies. And I think it's quite funny that even when Bruce was a kid, Joker still couldn't make him smile and laugh. And the scene also brings stranger danger to a new creepy level. But that's just what makes it fun to watch. There's Randall and Gary, Arthur's clown co-workers. Randall being the type of guy who has this "you're my boy, we gotta stick up for each other" type of person, but underneath he's an asshole who gets Arthur fired. So it makes it easy for us to side with Arthur when he kills Randall near the end of the film. And Gary's one of the few sympathetic people within Gotham City, being the only one that was ever nice to Arthur in his life, showing a lot of concern for Arthur's mental illness and well-being. So it makes a lot of sense at the end when Arthur doesn't kill Gary and lets him walk out. Because like Arthur said, he was the only one that was ever nice to him. And other characters include two detectives in Gotham City Police Department who were investigating the subway murders, Gene, a producer of Murray Franklin's show, Arthur's social worker throughout the beginning of the film, and the three Wayne Enterprises employees who got shot. There's just so many aspects of this movie that I love a lot and just makes me keep coming back to it. Like the soundtrack, for instance. It's just really awesome to listen to and really sets the tone for the movie. Most films would have light-hearted music along with dark music, but this one has dark, gritty music all out through, aside from the songs that were used throughout the movie. Along with the composer's music, we got a few light-hearted songs that wouldn't fit in a movie like this, but they strangely do. Featuring songs such as That's Life, Send in the Clowns, White Room, and Rock and Roll Part 2, which was used for the iconic stair dance scene. And I don't know if it's just me, but when they played Send in the Clowns during the end credits, it felt kind of sad after watching the whole movie. It was just that kind of effect, I guess. Every time I watch this movie, I don't really see anything that's obvious CGI or not so obvious CGI. I just see that most of the stuff was probably done all practical, like how a movie from the 80s would have been done. And I use the word 80s here because the movie really feels like you've gone back in time to the 1980s. It was set during the 1980s, and it feels like a 1980s film. Right down to the 80s style Warner Brothers logo rather than the current logo. And while watching this movie, I just get the feeling that there was no studio control, unlike most films that are released nowadays. I just get this feeling that Todd Phillips was given complete freedom and control to do whatever he wanted in this movie, and it really shows throughout the whole film. And it's very rare that we get a movie that wasn't dominated by studios taking control. It's just a great change of pace. And there's just so many good moments in this movie that's so worth talking about. Like how the movie makes you question what's really going on and what's going on in Arthur's mind. Of course, it was obvious that Arthur being on the Murray Franklin show in the opening of the film was all in Arthur's imagination. He dreamed it up while he was watching the Murray Franklin show live with his mother. And then it became obvious near the end of the film that his relationship with Sophie was all in his head as well. So stuff like that just makes you question what really did happen and what happened in Arthur's mind, playing to the fact that Arthur may be an unreliable narrator. It's just one of those films that really makes you think about these possibilities. And a lot of the film really does play on real life, and has very little influences from the comic books. Obviously there's some nods to the Killing Joke and The Dark Knight Returns, mostly with Arthur's life being nothing but bad days, and his appearance on the Murray Franklin show referencing his appearance on a talk show in The Dark Knight Rises. And even though the line "all it takes is one bad day" is not mentioned once in the movie, Arthur's life is filled with nothing but bad days. And he even gets to say that he had a bad day in one scene. So it was obvious that the Killing Joke played a huge part in the making of this movie, especially with the whole story of Arthur being a failed comedian, which was taken directly from the Killing Joke. The movie works as a great character study for the Joker, and a great origin story from the mind of Todd Phillips. And the whole film is just written so superbly, and Joaquin Phoenix's performance is so superb as well. This mostly plays on real life violence, like with people shooting others and riots in the streets. It's just one of those things that plays on real life. And while some people might claim that this movie could cause violence in the streets, the movie actually shows what causes violence. People being nasty to one another, and nobody thinking about what it's like to be someone but themselves. Arthur even mentions it when he's on the Murray Franklin show.
Everybody just yells and screams at each other. Nobody's civil anymore. Nobody thinks what it's like to be the other guy. They think that we'll just sit there and take it like good little boys, that we won't werewolf and go wild.
And that is very true, because there are some people out there that don't think what it's like to be someone else, and are just really nasty in general. But while that's true, it's also true that not everyone in the world is awful. It's only certain people that are awful to others. Like how they don't think about other people's feelings from time to time, which makes it very easy for us to sympathise with Arthur when he's doing these horrible things. You sympathise with him for doing such horrible things because the system fucked him.
What do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons him and treats him like trash? I'll tell you what you get. Get what you fucking deserve.
And that end scene where the Joker is praised by all the rioters and creates a smile with his own blood is just pure Joker to me. The moment Arthur made a smile on his face with his own blood immediately tells you that there's nothing left of Arthur Fleck anymore. Only the Joker. And Joaquin's performance, the great camera work, and the great music just adds to the tension and sadness of this moment. It's so dark, it's so sad, it's so tragic, it's so crazy, and it's so Joker. It's also really interesting how they tie in the Joker's origin story to Batman's origin story. And it's kind of a reference to the 1989 Batman movie by Tim Burton, where Joker was the one that killed Batman's parents. But here Joker influenced the death of his parents, connecting both their origin stories together. This ending also shows us that if Arthur lived in any other city in the world, perhaps his sanity could have been saved. But Gotham City allows him to become a monster. And whereas other incarnations of the Joker would have him fall in a vat of acid which drives him crazy, here the entire city of Gotham is the vat of acid. It's the thing that drives Joker to be what he is in this movie. And that bathroom dance scene improvised by Joaquin Phoenix is just an awesome moment. Right down to the music and the atmosphere and Phoenix's dancing. It just shows him slowly but surely transforming into the Joker. And if Joaquin hadn't improvised this whole dance scene, I don't think this scene, as well as the movie, would have had as much a big impact as it does. And Arthur's laugh in this movie is inspired by people who have a mental condition that causes them to laugh uncontrollably at inappropriate moments. And I've heard that Phoenix actually studied up on these laughs for people who have that actual condition, and he just has such a great range of laughs. Laughs that sound genuinely creepy, laughs that are proper laughs, laughs that are uncontrollable and maniacal, and even laughs that sounds like he's actually crying. That is just a superb performance on Phoenix's behalf. When Joker was released, it received numerous awards. At the 92nd Academy Awards, the film earned a lead in 11 nominations, including Best Picture and Best Director, winning Best Actor for Phoenix and Best Original Score for the composer. They also won at the Golden Globe and BAFTA award ceremonies. And the film was so successful it claimed over $1 billion worldwide on its $55 to $70 million budget. It's just amazing that a movie like this can earn up to $1 billion. It just shows what power a movie like this can have over the viewing audience. This movie was intended to be a standalone film with no sequels, although Warner Bros. Intended it to launch a DC Black universe. But it got so popular that Warner Bros. Actually offered them to do a sequel for it, which Phillips and Phoenix had a lot of interest in. And if they do bring out a sequel, I'm wondering if it's going to involve Joker meeting Batman. It would just be a great way to tie in the Joker to the Dark Knight. Perhaps not the new Batman that we're going to get in cinemas soon, but it would really be awesome to see Phoenix's Clown Prince of Crime face off against the Dark Knight in the future. Joker is definitely a film that I would recommend for any comic book fans and superhero movie fans and Batman fans. Even people who may not be comic book fans themselves would still get a kick out of this movie, because it takes place in a universe that's more real life rather than superhero world. Joker is one of those dark comic book movies that strays from the comics but still stays true to the character of the Joker. It has amazing acting, superb music, great effects, great writing, and it's just an all-around great comic book movie in my opinion. And it's a great tribute to the work of Martin Scorsese, who directed films like Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy. And it's funny because he was initially attached to the project as producer but had to drop out. But his fingerprints are definitely seen all over this movie as inspiration from his works. While some people may consider this as a dark movie that could influence violence in the world, if it raised over $1 billion in the box office and continues to bring in awards, then it's obviously done something right. And if you haven't seen this comic book marvel yet, then I would definitely recommend checking it out. You may come out of this movie having a better view on the world and how awful some people could be and how there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, or you may come out of it as crazy as the Clown Prince of Crime himself. But however you come out at the end, Joker is a great comic book movie that will be remembered for all time by comic book fans and moviegoers in general. It's definitely worth a watch.
For my whole life, I didn't know if I even really existed. But I do. People are starting to notice.
Well folks, I hope you've enjoyed my 500th video on my YouTube channel and look forward to more videos in the near future. I'm Dalek44 and I'll see you next time folks. After talking about Joker, I feel like I want to put it on again. Yeah, I'll go do that. I'll get some snacks and a drink to go with it first though.
Not it!
Sorry.
Man, what a day it's been at work. So many deliveries, so little time. Oh, I need some later time to recover before I do it all again tomorrow. Perhaps even the nostalgia might cheer me up.
Help me!
What the hell?
Please come and find me. It's dark in here.
Sounds like it's coming from the cupboard I used for a lot of the Legos I used for second coat. How can it all fit in there? Hope it's not Mises again. Last thing I need is Mies problems. Wait just a fucking minute. Little Miss Tiny?
Who are you?
Dalek44's the name. Nostalgia is my game. Let's get you out of there. I'll get you something to eat.
Thank you for the sweets, Mr. 44. I haven't eaten in days.
My pleasure, little one. What were you doing in my cupboard anyway?
Mr. Daydream was giving a ride on his big bird. We flew over some houses when I fell off, through an open window and into a room with lots of books. I set out to explore the house when I came to your room. I saw your open cupboard full of Lego and got trapped in there.
Poor thing. Must be scared in there.
It wasn't very pleasant, but I'm glad you found me.
Yeah. Well, seeing you reminds me of my childhood. Ah, yes, those were the days when my mum used to read me the Little Men and Little Misses books. Mr. Men is a series of 55 children's books by British author Roger Hargreaves, commencing in 1971. In 1981, the Mr. Men books were accompanied by a series of 14 Little Miss books by the same author, but with female characters.
Well, obviously.
After Hargreaves' death in 1988, his son Adam Hargreaves began writing and illustrating new stories like Mr. Good, Mr. Cool, and so on and so forth. Each book in the original Mr. Men and Little Miss series introduced a different title character and his/her single dominant personality to convey a simple moral lesson. The Mr. Men and Little Miss characters frequently reappeared in other characters' books. As of 2015, a total of 92 Mr. Men and Little Miss characters have been featured in the series. The book's simple stories with brightly coloured, boldly drawn illustrations made them very popular, with sales of over 100 million worldwide across 28 countries. With a children's book series being this popular, you'd think it'd only be a matter of time before some big TV company decided to cash in on it and make a TV show based on it.
They did, didn't they?
Indeed they did, Miss Tiny. 4 times to be exact. So sit back and relax while I go through the Mr. Men and Little Misses TV series, starting with the Mr. Men series from 1974. The Mr. Men characters were adapted into 2 animated television series in 1974 that consisted of a total of 28 episodes. They were produced by Terry Ward's company, Filmflix, formerly known as 101 Film Productions, in partnership with Trevor Bond and broadcasted by the BBC. The voices and the narration were provided by the late Arthur Lowe, who was best known for his role as Captain Maywarren in the sitcom Dad's Army, who used regional accents for some of the characters.
I'd like a loaf of bread.
I'm sorry, what did you say? Asked Mrs. Crumb, pretending not to hear.
I'd like a loaf of bread.
Noisy shouted. Oh, I'm sorry, said Mrs. Crumb, putting her hand to her ear.
Could you speak up a bit, please? I'd like a loaf of bread, roared Mr. Noise. I can't hear you, cried Mrs. Crook.
I want to be old and annoy people by pretending that I'm deaf.
Mr. Noisy gave up and went out.
And after watching this series of Mr. Men, it's really hard to imagine anybody else as the narrator. Arthur Lowe had such a great range of voices for the characters that it's really hard to imagine anybody else in the role of the Mr. Men. Especially when it comes to storytelling.
Get out of my garden. I beg your pardon, said Mr. Happy. You heard me, snapped Mr. Grumpy. Go away.
The iconic musical theme was composed by Tony Jaimes. Did I say that correctly or not?
Oh.
Anyway, only 28 books were adapted for that series. Those books being Mr. Happy, Mr. Snow, Mr. Funny, Mr. Small, Mr. Sneeze, Mr. Silly, Mr. Bounce, Mr. Bump, Mr. Messy, Mr. Jelly, Mr. Forgetful, Mr. Tickle, Mr. Greedy, Mr. Strong, Mr. Worry, Mr. Topsy-Turvy, Mr. Nosy, Mr. Impossible, Mr. Daydream, Mr. Uppity, Mr. Muddle, Mr. Chatterbox, Mr. Lazy, Mr. Fussy, Mr. Dizzy, Mr. Mean, Mr. Noisy, and my favourite, Mr. Grumpy.
I like Mr. Small. He's a very special friend of mine.
I know, Miss Tiny. I know. As good as the Mr. Men TV series is, there are pros and cons to it, like you'd expect with most TV shows. What? I'll go through some of the cons first. The cons was usually the colour scheme of the series. Now don't get me wrong, it's not a terrible colour scheme, but some of the characters just don't come out in the same colours as they would in the books. Like take Mr. Small for example. In the books, his hat is blue, but in the TV series, his hat is black. A very small change, but very noticeable if you've read the book. But one of the biggest changes was Mr. Mean's colour scheme. In the original book, he was blue with a yellow nose, but in the TV series, they made him grey for some reason. Now, I'm not really sure why they changed the colours of some of the characters, but it can get a little distracting from time to time, especially if you've read the book first. But if you could get past all that, the stories are really well adapted as you'd expect for a TV show at the time. Especially when you consider today's adaptations where they turn out to be not as great as the original works and sometimes having nothing to do with the originals. So despite the wrong colour schemes from time to time, the stories are really well adapted. And even though they could have made more episodes with more characters, the 28 characters that they chose were really good adaptations. These must have been the ones that Roger Hargreaves chose to be adapted. I don't know if that's true or not, but it probably seems that way since he helped work on the TV series.
Makes perfect sense.
Another thing I absolutely love is the colour scheme and the way the characters and the environments are drawn. It just honestly looks like they came right out of the pages of the books, drawn in a way that makes them look very much like their book counterparts. And let's be honest, when you're adapting these children's books into a TV series, an animation style that's similar to the original style that makes it look like they leaped out of the pages is really what you want from an adaptation. And one character I'm especially glad that they've adapted for the TV series was Mr. Grumpy, because he's one of my favourite characters in the franchise. And I personally think it's because of his grumpy personality and his colour scheme of blue, and he's a character that I can often sympathise with. Some things can easily annoy him, as was shown in the later Mr. Men show from the 2000s. And the theme music for the show is so iconic that it's just the theme that everyone associates with the Mr. Men. I mean, honestly, I don't think you could go one day without humming that tune to yourself if you've watched the Mr. Men series. So even though it has some issues with the colour scheming for some of the characters, Mr. Men is a really well adapted TV series for the characters. And it's one that most people look back on when they think of Mr. Men and TV. So it's definitely worth a watch if you love the Mr. Men books. And while it's a shame that not every single character was adapted for the show, the ones they did adapt were really well chosen. So if you haven't seen the Mr. Men TV series yet, I would highly recommend checking it out if you're a lover of Mr. Men and a lover of animation. The characters are really entertaining, the stories are really well adapted, and Arthur Lowe's narration is just so superb that it makes you come back for it more and more. After the Mr. Men series ended, it would take another 9 years for them to resurface on television screens, and they did so in Little Miss. During 1983, the series simply titled Little Miss was produced by Filmflix. This was narrated by husband and wife John Alderton and Pauline Collins. John Alderton, if you don't know, was the original narrator for Fireman Sam. You know, back when the show was good compared to the piece of shit we're getting now.
Utter crap. Thank you very much, sir.
The show had the same animation style from the first Mr. Men adaptation since it was done by the same company. And compared to the first TV series, this series only adapted 13 books. Little Miss Splendid, Little Miss Tiny, Little Miss Magic, Little Miss Shy, Little Miss Late, Little Miss Bossy, Little Miss Neat, Little Miss Plump, also known as Little Miss Greedy, Little Miss Naughty, Little Miss Scatterbrain, Little Miss Helpful, Little Miss Trouble, and Little Miss Sunshine. And I find it really odd that they only adapted 13 characters for the Little Miss TV series, especially when they adapted 28 for the Mr. Men series. It's just quite odd when you think about it.
It's a shame only 13 stories were adapted for the show, especially since there were so many Little Misses to showcase.
You're so right, dear. Compared to the first Mr. Men TV series, the Little Miss series featured a couple of songs in some episodes, mostly ones that were about the personalities of each Little Miss. Like there was a song about how Little Miss Plump loves to eat, there was a song about how scatterbrained Little Miss Scatterbrain is, and there was a little kind of song with Little Miss Tiny. My guess is they wanted to make these little musical numbers to emphasise the characters and their great personalities. And while a lot of people, including myself, love Arthur Lowe's narration in the original TV series, I honestly adore John Alderton and Pauline Collins' performances in the show. The two just have such a great chemistry from each other, and half the time it almost seems like the two improvised a lot of their lines for the show.
66 succulent sizzling sausages, which is difficult to say.
No, it isn't. 66. Oh, 66. Oh, 66 succulent sizzling sausages.
And even more difficult to eat.
No, it isn't.
I mean, just the way they talk to each other as some of the characters, it just makes it seem like they improvised a lot of the time, as great duos tend to do in performances.
I loved Mr. John and Miss Pauline's performances in that show. They have such great chemistry. I also love the way she voiced me in the show.
My fault exactly this time. Sometimes you can detect that John Alderton's using some of his Fireman Sam voices, like, say, perhaps his Elvis Crittenden voice for certain characters.
Where did I put the tea? Where did I put the milk? The sugar and the spoon.
And you can especially detect his Station Officer Steele voice when he's voicing Mr. Uppity.
Look here. I want a word with you. I can't be doing with incompetence. My hat! When I order a chair, I expect a chair.
He's just got such a great range of voices that he's become an icon of voice acting. And Pauline Collins just does a great job of performing the characters as well. Her voice for Little Miss Naughty is so delightfully mischievous. Her Little Miss Splendid voice is so posh and upper class, and it really suits the character. And I absolutely adore her Little Miss Tiny voice. It just sounds so tiny and squeaky and just so adorable that you just want to listen to it over and over again. Especially if you're a lover of Little Miss Tiny like I am.
Hello. Who are you? Yes, well you are, aren't you?
And the main con for this series for me is that they only adapted 13 stories for the TV series, especially when there were so many other Little Misses that they could have adapted for it. So even though it was short-lived, Little Miss is a great sequel to the Mr. Men TV series. It's got well-written adapted stories, with some changes to it. And speaking of which, I should probably talk about the changes that they did for this series. If you've read the Little Miss books and then watched the TV series afterwards, then you would have noticed some changes to the stories. Like in the original Little Miss Trouble story, Mr. Small gets punched in the eye a few times by the people that Little Miss Trouble lied to. Whereas in the TV adaptation, he gets confronted by Mr. Uppity, Mr. Clever and Mr. Worry in the sweet shop. Then he takes a step backwards and falls off the counter, giving us another reason for him to have hurt his foot. My guess is that they didn't want to risk showing Mr. Small being punched because of small children watching it. And they had this whole thing about violence being shown in children's shows back in the day. And they also had the inclusion of characters that weren't in the original books but made it into the TV episodes. Some people might think these changes are too bigger changes that makes them too different from the original stories, but I personally don't mind the changes. Like when I watch the TV series adaptations of the Small Railway Engine stories, then I can look over Thomas being included in them because I honestly like how they include Thomas in the story since he was the first one to meet the 3 railway engines in the TV series. And I've always been able to get by the changes they did in the Little Miss series because I honestly watched the TV series before I read some of the books. And even when I'd seen some of the differences in the books from the TV series, I honestly didn't mind it because I just loved both those adaptations. So for me, Little Miss is a great follow-up to the Mr. Men TV series. The very few characters they chose to adapt are very well adapted. The changes are quite noticeable when you read the books, but if you don't mind changes, you can get by it. The animation is just superb and much like the books, like in the first TV series, like they just leaped out of the books and went onto the TV screen. And John Alderton and Pauline Collins' performance are so superb that they become icons of Mr. Men and Little Miss. And if you love Mr. Men and Little Miss and the original Mr. Men TV series, I would highly recommend checking this out. You won't be disappointed with the adaptations, and it's sure to entertain children for hours on end. The Mr. Men and Little Misses also popped up around Christmas time in 1991, with a direct-to-video Christmas special titled Mr. Men Christmas Rescue. Mr. Men the Christmas Rescue was produced for ITV's TVAM blog, then released from the greatest ever Christmas videotape from Tempo Combinations in the early 90s. The special follows Mr. Clever and Little Miss Star hosting a newsreel where they're talking about the Mr. Men and Little Misses' preparations for Christmas, when we discover that the Queen of Miseryland sends 3 of her most miserable knights to Father Christmas's workshop to steal all the presents and ruin Christmas for everyone. And it's up to the Mr. Men and Little Miss to stop their plans and bring happiness back to Christmas. A very simple children's plot, but a very entertaining one for the Mr. Men and Little Misses. And we got to see some Mr. Men characters that were never adapted for the TV shows in the past. Some of them make small cameos, and some of them have bigger appearances.
The only thing I didn't like about the special is that I didn't get a big part in it.
Well, you did get a 5-second cameo in it.
Yes, but it was the last 5 seconds.
I see your point. And I honestly love the 3 knights' chemistry in this special, especially when they're trying to drive away from the North Pole but got lost in the snow.
Are you sure you know where you're going, Star? It all looks the same, doesn't it? Mile after mile of snow. We could be going round in circles. Me? Go round in circles? Never!
God, you really are as thick as clotted cream that's been left out by some clot until the clots are so clotted up you couldn't unclot them with an electric declotter, aren't you?
And if you may remember, I actually based a scene from Thomas and the Missing Christmas Tree for my Thomas series on that scene, where Sek and Co are driving in a van but get lost in the snow. It just left that much of an impact on me.
Let's face it, Starry, we are lost. And we're in the middle of a snowstorm. And the petrol gauge says empty. Mo, Mo, Mo! Why don't you try looking on the bright side? No, we're supposed to be miserable.
And so far I haven't been able to find out who's voiced the characters. And it obviously wasn't Arthur Lowe or Pauline Collins or John Alderton. But whichever actors they got to voice the characters did a really great job of bringing the characters to life. And while the animation style is slightly different from the TV series of Mr. Men and then Little Miss, it still looks like the characters leaped out of the pages of the books and onto the TV screen. And it's one of those specials that I tend to put on every Christmas just for a bit of nostalgia. And if you haven't seen this Christmas special yet, I'd highly recommend putting it on around December time. It's a fun watch for the kids, and I guess some Mr. Men and Little Miss fans will get some joy out of it as well. And it wouldn't take too long for the Mr. Men and Little Misses to return to our TV screens for another TV adaptation. The next proper adaptation for Mr. Men and Little Misses to be on TV series wise, was a new show titled Mr. Men and Little Misses from the 90s. The third adaptation was Mr. Men and Little Miss from 1994 to 1997. It was a French-British animated TV series based on the books. The series was produced by Marina Productions and aired on CITV in the United Kingdom, later re-airing on Nick Jr. on Channel 5, and France 3 in France. The show gave us new actors providing the voices of the iconic characters. The Mr. Men and other male characters were voiced by Gordon Peters, and the Little Misses and other female characters, and the odd non-female characters were voiced by Jill Schilling, who returned from the Christmas Rescue.
What the fuck is he on about? The fuck are you on about?
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. It was Jill Schilling who voiced the Little Misses in the Christmas Rescue. But I still have no idea who voiced the Mr. Men and other male characters in that special. But moving on. While I do honestly prefer John Alderton and Pauline Collins' voice in the Mr. Men and Little Misses, you can tell that the new actors do have a great chemistry with each other, especially with their range of voices. And they weirdly reuse similar noises that the actors make for various episodes. But that's beside the point. The new stories gave us more time to show the characters and their splendid personalities, and it gave them new adventures, like how to get along with each other and all that stuff. It had the same heart and spirit as the original books, just adding to the characters and their stories and adventures together. And I absolutely love how they gave Little Miss Tiny more screen time in this one.
Hello. And who are you? He certainly isn't much of a chatterbox.
This one gives you more screen time than new stories. And Miss Shilling gives you a cute little voice.
She does indeed, Miss Tiny. And while the new actress's voice is really adorable and squeaky, I just always find myself looking back to Pauline Collins' Little Miss Tiny voice, because that's the voice I grew up with. But like I said, the new actress does a great job as well.
Do be careful. You almost squashed me.
In fact, the majority of my favourite episodes from this show are ones that feature Little Miss Tiny as either a main character or as a supporting character. My ultimate favourite being An Unforgettable Sunday for Little Miss Tiny. It's just really enjoyable to see her leave the farm and go to the market and meet other characters like Mr. Bounce. And every second she's on screen is just so friggin' adorable. The animation style is very different from how it was in the previous TV incarnations. Not looking like it was hand-drawn, but still looked like it was coming out from some of the newer books that came out at the time. And they managed to get every character's colour scheme right this time around. But while the show is quite enjoyable at times, there are some things that are pretty hit and miss about it. Like mostly there'd be the old animation error that you'd expect from various TV shows. But the animation errors seem to be quite constant in this one. Like for example, how the hell can Little Miss Tiny almost be as big as Mr. Jelly in one episode? And in another episode, how the hell can Mr. Quiet and Little Miss Giggles almost be the same size as Mr. Small and Miss Tiny? That makes no sense to me. Like, was the person in charge of animation away those days?
Tell me, have you ever visited the planet Earth, sir?
And some people might call me silly for saying that, since in one episode they had Mr. Bounce almost be as small as Little Miss Tiny is, but not quite. But I can honestly believe that, because he was a very little person in the original cartoon and book. I mean, he was small enough to fall in a cup of coffee, for Christ's sake. So that's totally believable. But Miss Tiny being almost the same height as Mr. Jelly, Mr. Quiet and Little Miss Giggles is not very believable. If you could get past all that, this show is really entertaining and fun to watch. But for me, it's not really as good as the first two Mr. Men and Little Miss TV series, which I always look back on fondly because they're nostalgic favourites of mine. But if you love Mr. Men and Little Misses, then I'm sure you'll get some enjoyment out of this show, and the kids will definitely get some enjoyment out of it too. So if you love the first two adaptations, then I'd recommend checking this one out as well. You'll get some entertainment, some new Mr. Men and Little Miss stories, and it's just great to see these characters have a much longer appearance on TV. In 1998, the show ended with a Christmas special titled The Christmas Letter, bringing back Peters and Shilling from the show to voice the characters. And one of the most memorable things about this special is the fact that Jeffrey Palmer was called to narrate the special rather than have Peters do it like in the show. The story centred around Jack trying to send a letter off to Father Christmas. In his journey to the post box, he asks Mr. Forgetful to do it for him. But Mr. Forgetful, being Mr. Forgetful, ends up forgetting to post the letter, which prompts Jack to go on an adventure with Mr. Daydream to find the letter and send it to Father Christmas in person. Along the way, he comes across many occurrences like Mr. Mean and Little Miss Tiny, before finally reaching the North Pole and meeting Father Christmas. Like the Christmas Rescue, this is a nice, charming little Christmas special with the Mr. Men and Little Miss. And if you may remember, I put it on my top 12 Christmas specials list a few years ago. And if you may remember, I did mention how I got a little teary-eyed when I heard Little Miss Tiny singing the special. It just touched my heart years later as an adult.
I had no idea my song touched you, Mr. 44.
It certainly did, Miss Tiny. By the way, when did you get so good at singing?
I got lessons from Kylie Minogue to prepare for it.
Holy crap! The Kylie Minogue?
The same.
Well, those lessons really paid off.
Thank you, Mr. 44.
And as I said about the Mr. Men Christmas Rescue, the Christmas Letter is another great Christmas special that I'd recommend putting on around December time. It will entertain children if they love the Mr. Men and Little Misses, and it's sure to entertain grown-up fans of the Mr. Men and Little Misses as well. We wouldn't see the Mr. Men and Little Misses on TV again until the mid-2000s, when the Americans decided to cash in on it with the Mr. Men Show. The Mr. Men Show is a British-American animated children's television series based on the books, adapted from the published source material into a TV variety programme. The Mr. Men Show features comedy sketches, primarily, pantomimes, dance numbers and music videos. A very interesting thing about this show is the fact that in America they had American voice actors, and for the British broadcast they had British voice actors. The American version was narrated by Joey Dioria, and the British version was narrated by Simon Callow, very famous British actor. Even famous British voice actress Teresa Gallagher lended her voice to some of the characters in the British version of the show. Unlike every character she voices, she just has a great range of voices, and is especially adorable as Little Miss Chatterbox. I absolutely adore it. The show put the characters in various comedy sketches quite similar to those of Little Britain and the Two Ronnies, only child-friendly.
What could be funner than that?
And there were a few changes here and there with some of the characters' appearances. Like they gave Mr. Grumpy a monobrow and a pointy hat. For some reason they made Mr. Nosy look like Mr. Greedy. They removed Mr. Rude's top hat that he had in the book. Little Miss Stubborn and Little Miss Scatterbrain had a gender change to Mr. Stubborn and Mr. Scatterbrain. And I personally find Mr. Scatterbrain a little bit annoying at times, but I'm sure he's a fun and silly character for the kids. And Mr. Stubborn is just absolutely hilarious. I just love how stubborn this guy is.
There's no such thing as a werewolf.
Oh, yes, there is. I saw it on TV.
You can't believe everything you see on TV.
But it was real. They came from the Transylvanian forest. I assume they came by plane. Hey, I wonder if you have to pay more for your airplane ticket if you're a werewolf.
For the last time, there is no such thing as a werewolf.
Some of his best moments are normally when he's paired up with Mr. Grumpy. Just the two showing off their various personalities is just so damn hilarious to me.
You stepped over the line.
I did not step over the line. That was the perfect throw.
You stepped over the line. Prove it. You cannot admit when you've made a mistake.
Oh, yes, I can. In fact, the first mistake I made tonight was agreeing to go bowling with you.
And the second was stepping over the line.
Crooked cucumbers.
Two other characters that got makeovers in the show were Mr. Jelly and Mr. Fussy. Mr. Jelly was renamed Mr. Nervous and had various hallucinations of things that might scare him. And Mr. Fussy had a complete makeover and a rename to Mr. Pernickety, or Mr. Persnickety, depending on which region you're from. He was known as Pernickety/Persnickety over Season 1, then Season 2 he got his name changed back to Mr. Fussy. And I personally prefer the Mr. Fussy because it just suits him more. They also changed his colour scheme from a lighter green to a darker green. And like the name Mr. Fussy, I prefer him to be a darker green because that's what he was in the original books. And while some people prefer the American dub and others prefer the British dub, I honestly like both. I think it's very interesting that we're able to watch both versions on YouTube and compare them with each other, and see which actors we like the best.
Look, Mr. Grumpy, it's a fun house. Let's go inside.
I'd sooner eat mud.
Oh, come on, Mr. Grumpy. I mean, they wouldn't call them fun houses if they weren't lots of fun, because if they weren't, then they'd be called no fun houses.
Exactly, Miss Chatterbox. No fun.
I knew you'd agree. Come on, let's go. Look, Mr. Grumpy, a fun house. Let's go in.
I'd sooner eat mud.
Oh, come on. I mean, they wouldn't call them fun houses if they weren't fun, because if they weren't, then they'd be called no fun houses.
Exactly, Miss Chatterbox. No fun.
I knew you'd agree. Come on, let's go.
And for the American version, I love the actor they gave for Mr. Grumpy. It just suits how grumpy the character is. And Mr. Stubborn's voice actor is just so damn hilarious. It just cracks me up every time I watch it.
Oh, that's a relief. I thought you were going to perform an emergency carrot-ectomy. That's a relief. I thought you were going to perform an emergency carrot-ectomy.
And I absolutely adore the American voices of Little Miss Chatterbox, Little Miss Helpful and Little Miss Daredevil. They're just such adorable characters. Oh, and I forgot to mention, Little Miss Daredevil is a character created exclusively for the show. A Little Miss who loves daredeviling and death-defying stunts. She wears rocket boots and a crash helmet. She'll perform any death-defying stunts because she loves the dares and the do's. And she's just a fun character to be around.
Miss Daredevil, driving indoors is against the rules.
Rules are to be broken. You know me. I never pass up a chance to launch a rocket in someone else's backyard.
The other Little Miss created exclusively for the show was Little Miss Calamity, who is almost always in trouble. Normally the trouble would start with something normal, then something goes terribly wrong. She was introduced in the first season of the show, and then mysteriously disappeared in the second season. And even though she was never seen again after the first season, a statue of her did appear in an episode of season 2. But I find it extremely weird that she would just disappear off the face of the show after the first season with no explanation. Maybe she moved away to get away from all the calamity she's been having over the years, I don't know. But there's been no explanation as to where she's gone. But despite that, she is a really entertaining character in the show. Just seeing all the trouble she gets into when she doesn't really deserve any of it is just so sweet, and how she takes it all. While being different from the books as well as the previous TV shows, it keeps the characters the same as they always were, and it pictures them in various comedy sketches with cartoonish antics to go with it. And remember when I said that Mr. Grumpy is a character that's my favourite Mr. Man and someone I can often sympathise with? Well, I sympathise with him a lot more in this show because he deals with a lot of things that often annoy me, like seagulls, annoying people, and so on and so forth. And another thing I absolutely love about this show is how they picture Mr. Grumpy and Little Miss Chatterbox together in some episodes. It's almost as if Miss Chatterbox might have a crush on Mr. Grumpy in this version. I don't know, I might be looking into it too much here, but it just seems that way to me in some episodes. Like in one episode when Mr. Grumpy's waiting for a bus, Miss Chatterbox joins him at the bus stop, and every time he moves away, she moves closer to him. Almost as if she secretly likes him. As I said, it might just be me overlooking it, but it really does seem that way. Watch the episode to find out for yourself. The show sadly only had 2 seasons going for it, which I find a real shame because there were so many other Mr. Men and Little Miss characters that they could have adapted.
It's sad that they never made more seasons. They could have introduced many more of us.
What I find really sad is that they never introduced you in the show. You would have been so adorable in it, especially alongside Mr. Small. Yeah, I honestly think that Little Miss Tiny would have been an adorable addition to the show. Especially with her cutesy personality, I would have loved to have seen her interact with Mr. Small and Mr. Nosy, and maybe having a few conversations with Miss Chatterbox and Miss Daredevil. There was just so many possibilities for a 3rd season and bringing in some more characters from the books. But as an American/British TV show goes, the Mr. Men show is really entertaining and a great watch for Mr. Men fans. So the Mr. Men show is an adaptation that I would highly recommend checking out if you love comedy sketch shows. It's just got some great laughs, some not so great laughs, and it's just so entertaining to see these characters interact with each other as well as the new characters like Miss Daredevil. It's an adaptation that I would highly recommend checking out if you love the Mr. Men and comedy shows. And while that was the last Mr. Men and Little Miss adaptation to date, that didn't spell the end for the characters themselves, as Adam Hargraves is still writing new books for the series, including Little Miss Hug, an adorable character that I won a cuddly toy of her from the crane game at Lyme Regis. The show has also had many merchandises based on them, including toys, various accessories, new books, and many other things. They've even had a Specsavers advert that I talked about in one of my adverts reviews.
Someone should have gone to Specsavers.
They've even done some Doctor Who books to celebrate over 50 years of the show's history, just making Mr. Men versions of each Doctor. Just making Mr. Men-vised versions of each Doctor, like pitching how they would have looked like if they were Mr. Men characters. It's just a great contribution to the show's over 50-year history. So far they've done from the 1st Doctor to the 13th Doctor, so who knows if they'll make more for any future Doctors. But either way, it's just a great contribution to the show's history. And it's also a great read for Mr. Men's fans. They've even been used for the Bristol Up Fest a few years ago, where people in Bristol do street art with various characters or their own creations. And one year they used the Mr. Men and Little Misses around the city. So it was quite an honour to have a childhood icon be part of the Bristol Up Fest a few years ago. And one thing that makes the Mr. Men and Little Miss appeal to children as well as adults around the world is their simple personalities, their well-written stories with great morals, and just their great personalities that everyone can relate to. So I can honestly say that the Mr. Men and Little Misses are great British icons that will stay in the hearts of fans young and old. People will fondly remember the books, the TV shows, as well as the merchandise for these characters, and there's even been rumours of a big screen movie based on the characters. And And while nothing's been officially announced yet, I have no doubt that we'll be seeing the Mr. Men and Little Misses pop on our screens again very soon. Although, in the world of animation, what counts as soon? Maybe another 5 years. Maybe 6. It's been a real pleasure looking back at the Mr. Men shows with you, Miss Tiny.
And it was a pleasure to join you in your trip down memory lane.
So, what will you do now then?
I don't know, Mr. 44. It's such a long walk back to home farm for my little leg.
Why don't you stay here with me for a while?
Really? You'd let me stay here?
Of course you can. There's plenty of room here for a tiny one. I'll take good care of you until we can find a way to get you back home.
Oh, thank you, Mr. 44.
Call me Simon.
Thank you, Simon.
I shall never wash this cheek again. I'm Dalek44. I'll see you next time, folks.
Could you speak up a bit, please?
Knock it!
Sorry.
Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. Well, we've reached the 75th anniversary of the Railway series. How awesome is that? 75 years ago, the Reverend Wilbert Awdry wrote a series of books titled the Railway series, the first book being written for his son Christopher Awdry, who was bedridden with measles. It eventually went on to become a very popular children's book series. The first run went until Awdry retired in the 70s, and then his son Christopher took over in the 80s. Since then, it was adapted into a TV series by Britt Allcroft and David Mitton, and ran for several years, coming up to its 24th series, and a big screen movie starring Alec Baldwin, the late Peter Fonda, and Mara Wilson. So it's kind of pointless to say how much of an impact the Railway series has had on many of our lives. And the latest special that contributed to the 75th anniversary of this non-one-ending series is The Royal Engine. Thomas and the Royal Engine is the first double-length episode of the 24th series. It serves as the franchise's 75th anniversary special, and it has Thomas travelling to London. Is the Royal Engine a great way to celebrate 75 years of the Railway series? Let's find out. One evening, Percy is in a hurry to deliver an important delayed piece of mail. When the Fat Controller receives it, he recognises the seal on the envelope as being from the Queen of England, immediately piquing the interest of Gordon, James, Emily and Rebecca. The other engines initially assume that she is coming to Sodor again, but the Fat Controller learns that Her Majesty has invited him to Buckingham Palace to receive a special award for his services to the railway. The letter states the ceremony is to be held on the following day at 3 o'clock, and that Prince Charles has specifically requested for Thomas to be the engine to bring the Fat Controller, much to Gordon's annoyance. Thomas arrives shortly afterwards and is informed of tomorrow's plan. The next morning, Thomas is given a washdown and decorated with banners, while the Fat Controller tries on his new hat and prepares an acceptance speech. With the pair looking their best, Thomas borrows one of Spencer's coaches and departs Vicarstown, bound for London. However, he eventually loses his way and finds himself at Bransford's Canal. Branford is happy to see Thomas and lifts him up, but Thomas loses one of his banners. Thomas and the Fat Controller asks Bransford for directions and sends them on their way. Along the way, Thomas and the Fat Controller come across many other scrapes, including tree branches tearing off Thomas's other banner, scratching his paintwork and ripping the Fat Controller's suit, having to stop at another station and run into another engine called Duchess, who is also on her way to London. And it's all in a race against time to reach London in time for the ceremony. So how does the Royal Engine hold up as a 75th anniversary special? Pretty damn well. As this was the 75th anniversary of the show, they made callbacks to previous episodes of the show and Railway Series stories that were made. Like the events of the 4th series episode, Paint Pots and Queens was mentioned. Henry and Gordon mentioned the events of a Railway Series story and cancelled episode Gordon Goes Foreign.
I know the way to London after all, and have been there before, you know. Not the station names again, Gordon. I just wish they would make up their minds on what to call London Station.
The Fat Controller taking on the role of Thomas's fireman is a great callback to the 5th series episode Lady Hat's Birthday Party. And there's a great reference to Thomas and the Magic Railway where Thomas says little engines can do big things when he helps out Duchess. And there's just so many great callbacks to the Railway series and previous episodes that it will probably take up a whole video just to talk about them. What makes this even specialer for me is when they broadcasted it on Milkshake on Channel 5, Prince Harry himself introduced the special.
Jumpin' Jiminy Christmas!
When this episode aired on Channel 5's Milkshake, it had a special live-action introduction read by Prince Harry, which was quite fitting since this was a royal intended episode, and Prince Harry as a child showed up in the special. Talk about royal treatment. The new engine created for this episode is known as Duchess, also known as the Duchess of Loughborough, a large cream tender engine who lives on the mainland. Her job is to transport the royal family. Duchess is described as a lovely, warm, bubbly sort of effervescent engine who is very anxious to get things right. Although friendly, she can be forgetful, and her strive to be on time sometimes makes her seem like she lost her manners. Despite this, she is good-hearted deep down and very respectful, always looking to be the best she can be.
I should introduce myself. My name's Duchess. Duchess of Loughborough. And mine's Thomas. Thomas of Sodor.
When Duchess appeared in promo pictures of the special, lots of fans immediately assumed it was going to be the Duchess of Hamilton, since she appeared in the Railway series. But it turned out to be a completely different engine that's based on the Duchess of Hamilton. And I absolutely love Duchess's look in this episode. It's like a very interesting combination of Stanias, Carnations and Duchesses mixed into one, along with an LNER corridor tender for some reason. Very much like how Hedgehog's shape is a mixture of two different LNER classes. And I've seen some comments of people complaining about her colour scheme, it being sort of bland and silver, which makes her kind of look like Merlin when you think about it. I guess some people were really expecting her to be in that red livery like Duchess of Hamilton in real life, but it personally doesn't bother me that much. I mean, some people might associate this as being a royal colour. And her voice actress, Rosamund Pike, just plays the character superbly. She brings out the character's personality so well, and I really look forward to seeing her again in the future of the series. Maybe have her visit Sodor, or have Thomas and some of the other engines go visit her one time. There's just so many possibilities for her to come back, and I really love this character and would love to see her more often. While no other new engines were introduced in this special, we got the reappearance of Queen Elizabeth II, since she first appeared in Paint Pots and Queens. Ever since the story Paint Pots and Queens, this was the second time the Queen of England has ever appeared in the TV series. And it's just as awesome as it was back in Series 4. And I think they did a great job at capturing what the Queen of England really looks like. And one big surprise for her would be the fact that Sharon Miller voices her, one of the original head writers for the CGI series, as well as the current voice director of the show. So Sharon Miller has actually shown that she could do something else better than her writing, voice direction and voice acting. It just shows that despite her repetitive writing from the past, she does make up for it with her voice talents.
Gallant Thomas, who went out of his way to help an engine in need, it is my pleasure to present to you a special crest, signifying to all that you have truly been, if you don't mind me saying, a royally useful engine.
We also get to see her son, Prince Charles, a member of the royal family and the eldest son. And I find it really interesting that they would show him in the special, especially having him be the one that requests Thomas show up instead of any of the other engines. And I think it was a nice touch that they've shown him carrying a Thomas the Tank Engine toy, even though it might not actually be a Thomas the Tank Engine toy since it has no face, so it could just be a toy train that looks exactly like Thomas. But whatever way you want to look at it, it's a really nice touch. I also love how they gave Flying Scotsman a cameo in the special, which really makes sense since he lives in London. And guess which annoying character from Journey Beyond Sodor is back for this special? No, not that one. There you go. If there's people out there who didn't like Bransford in Journey Beyond Sodor, he shows up again in this one. But his role is more played down than it was in Journey Beyond Sodor, as he only shows up in one scene and then is never seen again afterwards. Oh, he could get quite irritating in his first appearance. He's not nearly as irritating this time because he has quite a small part. As well as the characters and the callbacks to the TV series as well as the Railway series, there's just so many other things to really love about this special. Like, I love how we see a bit of Wilbert Awdry writing a book or something. My guess is he was probably writing something about the tales that he'd seen on Sodor. And I absolutely love how they animated London in this special. It just looks so much like the real London that you could actually believe that you're transported to London in this special. CGI in this special is just as spectacular as it has been in the TV series recently, especially when they arrive in London. But as much as I love this special, there are a few nitpicks that I have with it. It's mainly in two areas. One fact is obviously the bouncing and some of the unrealistic cartoonish things that go on in the special. Although there are some cartoonish things that I do love, like how the driver or fireman is chasing the Fat Controller's hat around a field. I think it's just because I'm used to seeing that kind of comedy nowadays. It's just quite funny. And I also think it's quite cartoonishly silly how the Fat Controller takes a shower and doesn't take off his hat. Sort of like in the Goofy movie when Peter and Goofy don't take off their gloves in the hot tub. That kind of thing's weird. And this may sound repetitive for a lot of you fans who know about my love for Rosie, but I think it's a damn missed opportunity that Rosie didn't appear in the special, especially since they had Thomas depart in Vickerstown. I think it would have been a nice touch if they'd have just had her working in the background to show her rolling stock work in the series, or at least have a moment where he's wishing Thomas luck and then says goodbye to him as he leaves for London. And perhaps having her blush a little bit when he leaves. It's almost like a callback to Rosie is Red, which is one of my favourite episodes. But those two nitpicks don't come close to ruining what's a perfect 75th anniversary special, in my opinion. So in my mind, the Royal Engine is a great contribution to the 75th anniversary of the book series that this show is based on. If you haven't seen Thomas and the Royal Engine yet, I would highly recommend checking it out if you're a lover of the Railway series and the TV series. It's got great callbacks to the Railway series and the TV series, and like The Adventure Begins, it's a well-written love story to the Railway series as well as the TV series. And you'll enjoy watching Thomas travel to London from Sodor. It's just a wonderful special. And as I said, it's a well-written love letter to the Railway series. And no matter how bad the TV series may be getting in the most recent years, every fan is still going to look back at the Railway series and the classic TV series to see just how great Wilbert Awdry's writing was. These books continue to entertain children and adults around the world 75 years on. With their well-written stories, colourful pictures, and great morals, the Railway series is one of those books that is never forgotten about. It's just one of those book series that's well remembered by everyone around the world while other stories fade away from our memories. And as I've mentioned in Thomas Sember last year, these books are more adult than most people give them credit for. No matter how long the TV series goes on for, they're never going to compare to the original books as well as the classic series that were done by Britt Allcroft and David Mitton. And I don't really care if the TV show goes away from its roots again, to be honest, because people are always going to look back to the books as well as the classic episodes when they were based on the Railway series books. Not just because they're great stories that we all remember, but because they're worth remembering. While bad episodes from the TV series will just fade away from our memories, the original stories as well as the adapted stories and classic series episodes will never fade away from our memories. People are always going to go back to the Railway series as well as the classic TV series because they're great stories that are well worth remembering. And that's why I talk about it here. And all those reasons and many more is why my love for Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends and the Railway series will never die. Not just because they're great stories, but because they're stories worth remembering. I'm Dalek44. Happy 75th anniversary, Railway series.
up their minds on what to call London Station.
Not it!
Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. Yeah, ever since I got my Amazon Fire TV stick, I spend a lot of my time watching things on Disney+. Yes, I've been having tons of fun exploring what Disney Plus has to offer. Old shows, new shows, original shows that were made specifically for the whole thing, and I've been trying to get around to watching Star Wars The Mandalorian, but kept getting distracted by some old favourites like Darkwing Duck and DuckTales. The original and the reboot. And I'm still waiting for them to bring House of Mouse on Disney+. Come on Disney, make it happen. Even Little Miss Tiny's enjoying Disney+.
You show that robot who's boss, Owlette. What a great show!
Love that girl. But all this streaming stuff has got me thinking. Should Cartoon Network have a streaming service of its own? As most of you know, Cartoon Network is a children's cartoon station that's been going on since 1992, and has been going strong for 27 years with some great cartoons and very recently not so great cartoons. So with Disney Plus being the big thing in streaming services, it makes me wonder if Cartoon Network could have a streaming channel of their own. I mean, what with Disney cashing in on the whole streaming service thing like Amazon and Netflix are doing, I think it's only a matter of time before other TV companies start doing the same thing. And Cartoon Network is one of those ones that I think should definitely do it.
I think I know what I'm talking about, alright? Alright? I didn't spend 12 years in kindergarten because I'm stupid.
Having all these cartoons from the various generations of Cartoon Network's history wouldn't just please the fans that watch it now, but it would also please the fans like myself who have watched it since the beginning. Just somewhere where people will be able to watch all their favourite shows from Cartoon Network. There'd just be so much to offer for the fans of the classic era of Cartoon Network as well as the fans of the current era of Cartoon Network. One thing I would definitely love to see the Cartoon Network streaming service do is put on all the old Hanna-Barbera cartoons that they used to show on Cartoon Network before they started making their own stuff. But as well as having Cartoon Network specific shows for the channel, I think that it could also work with some of the old shows that they used to show that weren't specifically owned by Cartoon Network. Like say the Looney Tunes and Merry Melody shorts, perhaps the Popeye cartoons, everything that was owned by Hanna-Barbera since Hanna-Barbera practically owned Cartoon Network at the time. And even some shows that weren't owned by America. Now being able to show Looney Tunes, Merry Melodies and every Hanna-Barbera cartoon ever made wouldn't be a problem since they're owned by Warner Brothers, but other properties like say Popeye and all that stuff may be a bit of a problem since they're not owned by Warner Brothers. Even Thomas the Tank Engine might be a bit difficult since they're owned by Mattel and Hit Entertainment at the moment. And we all know that Cartoon Network used to rerun Thomas the Tank Engine in the UK in the 90s for a while, and they currently run the new series on Cartoonito. So even if they were to put Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends on Cartoon Network streaming services, which may or may not happen, it's very unlikely that we'll see the classic series and just get the new series. It would also be nice to see some movies that Cartoon Network used to air on the streaming service as well. Like say the old Looney Tunes films, the Tom and Jerry movie perhaps, and a lot of the other animated films that were owned by Warner Brothers. It would just be great to see what Cartoon Network had to offer back in the old days, whether it be TV shows and or movies. Another really cool thing I think they should do is collect all the Cartoon Network city bumpers that they used to do in the 2000s and stick them all together like a series of shorts. In case nobody remembers, the Cartoon Network city bumpers were little short bumpers that showcased every Cartoon Network character at the time in their own city, which showcased various areas of their own shows and rolled them into one complete city. So I think it'd be really awesome to have these as a part of the streaming service that may or may not happen because they were just really great to watch. Hell, they could even put it in their own folder and show them as one whole series or as little shorts, much like how Disney Plus shows the DuckTales reboot shorts. And I personally think it would be a no-brainer to have various animated shows from the other channels that Cartoon Network's had over the years, like say Boomerang, Cartoonito, Toonami, the list goes on. And while it could be possible for Adult Swim to be a part of it since they're practically owned by Cartoon Network, I'd say that the streaming service would probably have to put up a warning in each of their shows to say that it's filled with adult content. It would also give the new Cartoon Network viewers the chance to see some of the classic shows that they never got to see in their childhoods. Some of the classic shows that were really popular, even some of the shows that weren't so popular, and the old nostalgic classics that were underrated. And while we're on the subject of classics that used to air on Cartoon Network, I'd say it would probably be a no-brainer if they had the Mr. Men show on it as well. But if they were going to do that, I'd probably imagine that they would put in the American dubs for the show, much like how Netflix has the American dubs of Clifford the Big Red Dog. I don't know how likely it is that Cartoon Network would do a streaming service based on their channel, but I think it would be a really good idea and would definitely stream up the channel's popularity. I think it would be a really nice way to bring Cartoon Network fans together. Have it be almost as popular as Disney Plus and Netflix, just somewhere for Cartoon Network fans to go and watch some of these old classic shows that you loved as kids. Especially since Cartoon Network and Warner Brothers refuses to sell these classics on DVD here in the UK. It would just be a great way for the fans to reconnect with some of these shows that they grew up watching when they were little. But whether or not it does happen in the future, I think it'd be really great to be able to see some of these old classic shows that we all used to love as kids. It's just a crazy idea in my head that may work for the fans, and it would just be a great love letter to Hanna-Barbera to be able to see all these classic cartoons that they worked on while they were working at Cartoon Network. And like I said, it may not be very likely that a Cartoon Network streaming service could happen in the future that may be as big as Disney Plus and Netflix, but it's just a really great thing that I had in my mind. Something that could bring Cartoon Network fans back into memory lane to rewatch some of their old classic favourites. So yeah, it's a silly idea in my head that may or may not happen, but it would just be a great thing for Cartoon Network fans all over the world. A place for them to relive their childhoods. If you have your own thoughts on other channels that should do their own streaming services like Disney Plus and Netflix are doing, then put them down in the comment section below and get your thoughts out there. I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks. Too much bad.
Notice!
Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. If you've seen past episodes of my review show, then you'll know that I'm a fan of Sonic the Hedgehog. That popular video game character that's been on our screen since the 90s. He's had tons of video games, various animated TV shows, an anime movie, a cameo appearance in Disney's Wreck-It Ralph and its sequel Ralph Breaks the Internet, which I still think should have been called Ralph Wrecks the Internet. I mean, he's Wreck-It Ralph for crying out loud. Anyway, not to mention the level pack in LEGO Dimensions, which is still awesome today, by the way, and more video games in the upcoming future. So you could argue that Sonic the Hedgehog is almost as big a video game icon as Super Mario. And at the start of this year, we were all treated to a great big screen movie known as Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic the Hedgehog is a 2020 action-adventure comedy film based on the video game franchise published by Sega. It features an all-star cast including James Marsden, Ben Schwartz, Tika Sumpter and Jim Carrey. It became the second highest grossing film of 2020 and gained lots of praise from critics and fans alike. Can this movie live up to the hype that was built up throughout all the trailers? Let's find out. Sonic, a young blue hedgehog who can run at supersonic speeds, finds himself sought after by a tribe of Akenders for his power. His guardian, Longclaw the Owl, gives him a bag of rings that can create portals to other planets, using one to send her to Earth while she protects him from the Akenders, and also gives Sonic a map to a planet filled with mushrooms to use if he finds trouble on Earth. 10 years later, Sonic enjoys a secret life near the town of Green Hills in Montana, but longs to make friends. He idolizes the local sheriff, Tom Wachowski, and his veteran wife, Maddie. Unaware the pair are planning to relocate to San Francisco soon, as Tom has been hired by the San Francisco Police Department. One night, Sonic becomes upset over his loneliness when playing baseball by himself. He runs at supersonic speed as a result, inadvertently triggering an electromagnetic pulse that knocks out power across the Pacific Northwest. Robotist and scientific genius Dr. Robotnik is enlisted by the United States Department of Defense to uncover the source of the outage. Robotnik discovers and tracks Sonic, who hides in the Wachowski shed. Tom discovers Sonic and accidentally shoots him with a tranquilizer, causing him to send his bag of rings through a portal to San Francisco. Tom reluctantly agrees to help Sonic before Robotnik arrives at the Wachowski's house and the two flee. As the pair evade Robotnik, who labels Tom as a domestic terrorist, they slowly bond, with Tom learning about Sonic's desire for a real friend. Robotnik comes across one of Sonic's quills, discovering the power within has the potential to fuel his robot, and becomes obsessed with capturing Sonic. And the whole film is a fun buddy trip with Sonic and Tom trying to evade the evil Dr. Robotnik from conquering the world with Sonic's powers. So how does Sonic the Hedgehog the movie hold up? Very damn well. As far as video game movies go, this is definitely one of the best ones I've seen since Detective Pikachu. And we've all heard a billion times that movies based on video games can become box office bombs. But you could argue that this was the movie that changed all that, showing that you can make a good video game movie. And I guess it's impossible to talk about this movie without bringing up the controversial original design that came up in the first trailer. When the first trailer for this movie was released, they showed Sonic in a design that looked god-awful. I mean, it just looks nothing like the original video game character, and it just looks completely ugly and hideous. While I praised the choice to cast Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik in the movie, I was very skeptical about Sonic's original design because it just looked absolutely hideous. And I'm not the only one who thought that.
Sir, you are ugly, hideous, and furthermore, not at all pleasant to look at.
And surprisingly, Paramount listened to the fans' reactions and went back to a design that was more like the original video game character. It was definitely a welcome change. So this is one of those occasions where the Hollywood team actually listens to what the public wants, and the end results pay off too.
I was not expecting that. But I was expecting not to expect something, so it doesn't count.
And you can't have a fun buddy road trip movie without a great cast of characters. And this movie definitely has that. There's Sonic the Hedgehog, voiced by Ben Schwartz, who you may recognise as the voice of Dewey in the DuckTales reboot. What? Sonic is an anthropomorphic blue hedgehog with superhuman speed, who is on the run from Robotnik in the United States government. As far as Sonic the Hedgehog goes, this guy is still the same old Sonic the Hedgehog that a lot of us grew up with, but with a few differences to bring him into this world, making him quite socially awkward due to his years of being alone. But overall, he's a fun-loving rascal who just wants to make friends and be accepted by the public.
I've never sat in a bar stool before. So squishy. Oh, look at this, it spins. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I feel sick.
While the blue hedgehog is still full of himself in this movie like he was in some of the other adaptations and video games, They've added some new stuff to this character, like having be socially awkward around people. And that just makes it unique.
Is that all you got?
No, but thank you for asking.
Tom Wachowski is the sheriff of Green Hills who wishes to join the SFPD. He befriends Sonic and aids him in his quest to stop Robotnik. The dynamic between Sonic and Tom kind of reminds me of Eddie Valiant and Roger Rabbit from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Two completely different characters working off of each other's own personalities and quirks. Someone who wouldn't have wanted anything to do with Sonic, but slowly grows very fond of him as they get to know each other better on their trip.
How are you not dead? I have no idea!
And there's his wife, Maddie, a veterinarian who later helps him and Sonic evade Robotnik. Maddie is the kind, sweet woman who sticks by Tom's side no matter what. And when you see this type of character in movies, you expect him to be the kind of stick-in-the-mud girlfriend/wife who has no nonsense. But she's a fun and caring character that you really get to like as the movie goes forward. Then there's the evil Dr. Robotnik, played by the legendary Jim Carrey, a mad scientist and inventor who is after Sonic's super speed powers to conquer the world. When they announced Jim Carrey was going to play Dr. Robotnik, I was immediately hyped because I had a feeling that Jim Carrey was mad enough to play Robotnik. And he just plays the part superbly in my opinion. We've seen many versions of Dr. Robotnik throughout the years in the TV shows and the video games. In most adaptations, you see Robotnik as being a comedic villain who can't always be taken seriously, yet is a great threat despite his stupidity. In Sonic SatAM, he was the most threatening villain of all time, and it was shown by Jim Cummins' voice performance. And Jim Carrey takes the character and makes it his own. Sort of this weird mad scientist who loves boasting about how smart he is and how his IQ is higher than anyone else's. And he even goes so far as to belittle people for their low intelligence compared to his.
Listen, pal, I don't know if you realize...
I'm sorry, Major. What was your name? Benny?
Nobody cares! Nobody cares. Listen, Major, nobody cares. You know why nobody cares who you are? Because nobody cares about your feeble accomplishments. And nobody cares how proud your mommy is that you're now reading at a 3rd grade level.
Every time this guy was on screen, you could just immediately tell that he must have been having a ton of fun playing this character. And it shows that he hasn't lost his touch in the world of comedy. And every time I watch that scene where he dances to Where Evil Grows, I just think that Jim Carrey must have chose that song and decided to go all the way with it. You could tell that every second he was on screen, he took the character and just ran all the way with it and had a blast with it. As he did with many of his other performances in the past.
Oh, give me a big fat break!
Robotnik is accompanied by his right-hand man, Agent Stone, and he's your typical loyal guy who always sticks by the villain's side, despite not getting any respect from his employer. But you can tell that this guy just loves working for Robotnik and will do anything to please him, even if he doesn't get any satisfaction.
I just thought you might like a latte with steamed Austrian goat milk. What do I look like, an imbecile? Of course I want a latte. I love the way you make them!
And even though she was only shown for a couple of minutes in this movie, Longclaw is an anthropomorphic owl who was Sonic's original caretaker before they were separated. And she's like the mentor, the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the film. And you could also see her as a caring mother who takes care of Sonic since he was a baby. And one of the members of the US government is played by Gary Chalk. And if you don't recognise this guy by face or name, then he was the guy who did the voice of Grounder in Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, Dr. Robotnik in Sonic Underground, and Slash in Reboot.
Can you make broth out of robot? Sure, why not? A little salt, a little pepper, until we be delicious.
You lost the hedgehogs! You destroyed my command ship! I'm done with you! Take them to the roboticizer room!
Hank! Oh, Hank, speak to me! I would wake up! Drink my friend of energy? I don't think so!
So it in a way makes sense that this guy would be in a Sonic the Hedgehog movie since he's been in 2 Sonic the Hedgehog cartoons already. And the CGI in this movie is just superb. I mean, you can see pretty much every bit of quill and fur on Sonic. It really does seem like he's really there in real life. It just shows how far CGI technology has come over the years, especially when you look at Robotnik's robots. And there's various Sonic references throughout the movie, like Sonic's love of chili dogs, giving the rings a different purpose besides collecting them, and I think it's awesome that they have the rings be portals to. It just gives them a purpose besides picking them up to increase your health. The word Badniks being labelled on one of the switches on Robotnik's portable laboratory. And I don't know if it's just me, but Sonic doing a runabout in that washing machine might be a reference to the Sonic Says where they talked about kids climbing into a washing machine. And call me crazy, but I'm pretty sure that moment where Sonic's playing air guitar is a reference to Sonic Underground when he had a guitar as an instrument and weapon. It might just be me, but it just seems like a cool reference to Sonic Underground to me. And one thing I didn't expect to see was a reference to the Sonic drawing made by a fan. Yeah, a few years ago this fan did a drawing of Sonic the Hedgehog that was called Sonic, and it became a popular meme on the internet. And it was referenced when this guy named Crazy Carl claimed that he saw Sonic. It's just great details like that that makes this movie rewatchable. And even though Sonic and Robotnik are the only Sonic the Hedgehog characters that appear in this movie, we do get a tribe of Akendas, who are Knuckles' species, and they just look awesome with their tribal masks and get-up. And I really hope we do see more of them in the future of the movies. And they of course ended it with post-credits scenes, which gave the fans many theories on what we can expect for Sonic the Hedgehog 2. One with Robotnik stuck on the Mushroom Planet after his defeat, planning his revenge and getting back home. And then in the second one we see Tails arrive on Earth looking for Sonic. So that just paves the way for future movies to come. And it's even been recently announced that they are going to do a sequel to the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, which gave fans a lot of their own ideas on what Sonic the Hedgehog characters could appear in the Sonic sequel. Many people have said that Knuckles would be a good choice since his kind were featured in the first film, and even a lot of people have said that Amy Rose should appear in the movie. Are we talking about the Sonic the Hedgehog sequel that's coming out soon? Oh, God's sake, Sec. Are you here to talk about Sonia Hedgehog again? Hey, relax, Dalek44. I'm just here to give my idea of a character that could show up. Okay, picture this. We cut to a faraway planet in an Arab-like palace. We go inside the palace, and we see Sonia Hedgehog as an Arabian princess being pampered by a lot of sexy belly dancing hedgehogs. And she wears a princess outfit that's as skimpy as Shantae's princess outfit from the Shantae video games. And at some point in the movie she learns that Sonic is her brother. Yeah, that sound good? Yeah. Where do you come up with these ideas, Zach? Oh, I can't help it, mate. You wrote me that way. What am I going to do with him? Where was I? Oh yeah, ideas for Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Here's some ideas on characters I'd like to see in the next movie. I agree with the fans on wanting to see Knuckles and Amy Rose in the movie because they're two essential parts of Sonic the Hedgehog. And I have my own ideas on what Amy Rose would be like in a movie. I would personally like her to be a bit of a mixture between her Sonic Boom TV series personality and a little bit of her official personality where she has a huge crush on Sonic. But, you know, make her less insane than she was in Sonic X. And I think that could be a really good subject to do in the next movie. Have Sonic and Amy meet for the first time and gradually fall in love with each other. I just think it would be a really good way for this version of Sonic to experience love for the first time. The fanboy in me really wants to hear Tara Strong voice Amy Rose in a future movie. Because she has an adorable enough voice that I think she could pull it off. But the one thing I would definitely love to see in a future of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie series is Metal Sonic. The first time we see him in anything besides the video games is the anime movie from the 90s. What with how realistic CGI can be nowadays, I'd love to see how they would pull off Metal Sonic in another movie. Because it would just be so awesome to see Metal Sonic in the live action world. He's just such an awesome character that I would really love to see on the big screen. He would just be an awesome addition to the live action Sonic the Hedgehog movie series. But I do agree with Dalek on one thing. I think it would be nice to see Sonia and even Manic show up in future Sonic the Hedgehog movies. Mainly because I think they're two really well written characters from Sonic Underground, and I find it a real shame that they don't get as much love and attention in the media as they do besides fan art. So it would be nice to introduce them to a new generation of Sonic the Hedgehog fans. So in my mind, Sonic the Hedgehog is one of the best movies to come out of 2020 so far. And I always look forward to rewatching it over and over again whenever I feel like putting it on. So overall, I think Sonic the Hedgehog is definitely worth your time if you're a Sonic the Hedgehog fan and a movie fan in general. It's got great references to the video games and some of the TV shows. The CGI is superb, especially how they redid Sonic the Hedgehog to make him look more like his video game counterpart, and Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik is a delight, and I would even say one of the best parts of the movie. So if you haven't seen this movie yet, I'd highly recommend checking it out. You'll get a lot of fun and action out of it, and it's a great buddy comedy with Sonic the Hedgehog. And but I look forward to seeing what lies ahead for the future of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie series. I have a feeling it's going to be a way past cool ride. I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks. God, that movie's way past cool. While I praised the choice of Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik when the trailer came out, I was very skeptical.
Of course I want a laundry. I don't know where you make them.
Nuggets!
You know, I've got so many nostalgic things to review. But I don't know. Maybe I should consider reviewing something I've never actually seen before. But what? If only someone would randomly pop up and suggest something for me to review with them.
Ask, and ye shall receive!
What? Am I psychic or something?
Good to see you, Simon. I hear you're looking at something you've never seen before. Correct?
Yeah, how'd you know?
Dalek, it's in the script.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I got quite a show for you. I'm going to give you a crash course on one of my favorite TV shows from Canada. Allow me to introduce you to the Raccoons! Before we plunge into the review, I have to let you know, Simon, that I grew up with the Raccoons in the 90s. Even though it was an 80s cartoon, they had syndicated reruns on CBC. Plus, I did a crossover with Thomas and Friends, a la Alsop Productions, which you can check out. So what is the story of the Raccoons, I hear a lot of you asking? Well, the series takes place in Western Canada, i.e. British Columbia/Alberta area, or in Northern Ontario, where the titular Raccoons are trying to stop the evil, multi-million-dollar mogul, Cyril Sneer, from devastating the evergreen forest, the primary setting of the show.
So it's one of those shows with a subtle environmental message?
In a way, yes. Before the show became a reality, Kevin Gillis, who happens to be one of my main inspirations for storytelling, on par with the late great Stuart McLean, creator of The Vinyl Cafe. Kevin Gillis and his team decided to do some specials to develop the Raccoons. The names of the specials are as follows. 1. The Christmas Raccoons. 2. The Raccoons on Ice. 3. The Raccoons and the Lost Star. And finally, Let's Dance, the Raccoons. Although Gillis did the 4 specials, I see the 3 out of the 4 as movies, whereas Let's Dance the Raccoons was more a music video montage. After the success of the specials, Gillis and his team went right to work on making the series that I know and love.
Wow, usually TV shows would start with a series or 2 and then make a special. Then again, the Porridge Revival series did start with a special, as did Still Open All Hours.
When it comes to the characters of the show, the Raccoons have a pretty fantastic lineup of characters, such as Bert Raccoon, who happens to be one of my all-time favorite characters on par with Minerva Mink from Animaniacs, as well as Pinky and the Brain from their spin-off show, and Animaniacs, respectfully.
So what's Bert like, personality-wise?
Bert is an energetic raccoon with a lot of imagination. Bert always likes to seek out adventure and to live life to the fullest. Although he is impulsive and prone to foolish decisions, he has a kind heart, plus he has an obsession with peanut butter.
Reminds me of a certain blue hedgehog I grew up with. Runs really fast, loves chili dogs.
Are you talking about Sonic the Hedgehog?
Yeah, that's it. Bert Raccoon reminds me of him.
Well, that is a pretty good comparison. On the other end of the spectrum is Cyril Sneer, the main antagonist turned anti-hero. This guy would make Donald Trump blush.
Oh yeah, he went there. I always love insulting politicians. The bastards are not to be trusted.
No, scratch that. The eco-villains from Captain Planet blush. Throughout the series, Cyril has tried to bring the Evergreen Forest to its knees, but he's always thwarted. He's often accompanied by the pigs, his right-hand men, and his son, Cedric.
Would I be right in thinking that the pigs are the goofy idiot minions that always mess up?
Yup, just like Buzz and Delete from Cyber Chase, who ironically enough, Buzz was voiced by my hero, Len Carlson. Rest in peace, my friend.
Len Carlson? Where have I heard that name before? Oh yeah, I remember. He was the voice of Minimus in Atomic Betty.
The other characters have a ton of personality too, like Ralph, voiced by Bob Dermer, and Melissa Raccoon, who is voiced by Rita Coolidge, Dottie West, and Susan Roman, the happily married couple who live in the Raccoon Dominion with their house guest, Bert.
Sounds like an 80s sitcom setup.
Lisa Raccoon, Ralph's niece, and Bentley's teenage basketball-playing sister, who becomes a prominent character in Season 5, after her first appearance in the Season 4 episode Spring Fever, where she comes to visit. Then, there's George and Nicole Raccoon, Ralph's respective older brother and sister-in-law, and the father and mother of Bentley and Lisa Raccoon, a couple who were once nomads.
Now, are these the kind of in-laws who are helpful or not so nice to the son-in-law?
A bit of both, actually. And then there's George and Nicole's son Bentley, an expert with computers and is a very typical younger kid, with a tendency to overemphasize his personal setbacks. He often favors his uncle's houseguest Bert, while Cyril Sneer thinks highly of him. He is initially introduced as Ralph's cousin in his first appearance, but later retconned into his nephew.
Why? Wouldn't it make more sense to stick with what they first went with?
Maybe there was an argument with the writers during production. I don't know. Cedric Sneer, Cyril Sneer's nerdy son and Bert Raccoon's best friend, and heir to the Sneer fortune. Since the special The Raccoons on Ice, Cedric has gained a crush on Sophia and usually acts nervously around her.
Classic old-fashioned love interest trope.
Sophia Tutu, Cedric's ditzy girlfriend who is a superb swan glider and diver, as shown on The Raccoons on Ice. She was phased out of the show in later years, and Schaefer, to name a few.
Schaefer? What the hell kind of name is Schaefer?
No, you pepper-potted prick!
Oh. Well, I thought it was funny. Oh dear. Sorry about that, Trainmaster A7. Please continue.
Schaefer, a large sheepdog who is friends with the Raccoons. Initially portrayed as slow and dim-witted in the original specials, he quickly became one of the smartest characters on the series, and eventually opened the Blue Spruce Cafe as a bartender and assists with the Evergreen Standards technical needs.
Because every cartoon show needs a lovable animal in a world filled with animals. Just go with it, folks.
And then there's Brew, who is Bert's sheepdog puppy. Originally Tommy and Julie's dog, Brew made his first appearance in the Raccoons and the Lost Star. He's probably the cutest cartoon puppies out there, on par with the Dalmatian pups from 101 Dalmatians.
Very cute then.
It's hard to believe, but a lot of famous Canadian voice actors are in the show. Some went on to bigger and better things, such as Tara Cherendoff, aka Tara Strong.
Tara Strong? You mean the voice of Bubbles in the Powerpuff Girls? Not the shitty reboot. Batgirl in Season 4 of Batman the Animated Series? And the voice of Unikitty in the TV show based on the character from the Lego Movie? That's Tara Strong!
The one and only Tara Strong. You know anyone else? Stuart Stone voiced Bentley, who you may remember played Ralphie from the original Magic School Bus, and Canadian singer Lisa Lougheed, who did the tune Run With Us at the end credits of each Raccoons episode. Still, it wouldn't be until Lisa Raccoon's appearance would she sing Run With Us, since Stephen Lunt did the song first. She also did the voice of Lisa Raccoon, Bert's love interest in the show.
Speaking of the music, I've heard that music cues from the Raccoons was used in Captain Punjab's Thomas the Banshman Engine series, one of the best Fan Thomas the Tank Engine series of all time.
You are correct, my friend, and I used it for Thomas and the Raccoons trilogy for Alsop Productions. John Stahl did make the music for the Raccoons, and it's as iconic as it gets.
I don't blame you. That music is catchy.
Indeed it is. The Raccoons ran from 1985 to 1992, and since then has gained a following from fans old and young.
Seems like I might have enjoyed this show if I was introduced to it as a kid. It's a damn shame that none of the channels I watched as a child ever aired the show. Well, let's hope they don't try and make a reboot based on it.
Actually, on July 4th, 2017, it was revealed that series creator Kevin Gillis was working on a reboot of the series. On June 17th of that same year, Ottawa animation studio Big Jump officially announced the new designs for Bert, Ralph, Melissa, Cyril, and Cedric on their website. The reboot is scheduled to premiere in 2020, which ironically happens to be this year.
Oh my god, when will Hollywood learn?
Well, technically, it's Canadian media. And Gillis is at the helm of the project, so there's hope.
Well, as long as it takes how to make a good reboot lessons from the DuckTales reboot rather than that.
Even though the Raccoons are part of my childhood, the saddest part is that the series itself is an obscure gem of Canadian culture. But not only that, it's sad Glenn Carlson passed away in 2006, and I wish I met him. But regardless, the Raccoons will always hold a special place in my heart, with its memorable characters, setting, and the people behind it. Glenn Carlson, here's to you, my friend. You were my inspiration.
While I never grew up with the Raccoons, I never heard of it until years later. I see the appeal of the show. It's bright and colourful, the characters have likeable personalities, and if it's gained a huge following years later, then it's done something right. If you haven't seen this 80s Canadian gem yet, I'd recommend it if you're a fan of animation. Well, it's been a real pleasure to look at this animated gem with you, Trainmaster 89. And it's been quite a nice change to take a look at something that I've missed out on.
The pleasure was mine, my friend. And as Red Green would say, keep your stick on the ice.
I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks. Well, now that that's out of the way, what am I going to look at next?
Simon, I thought that we could watch a movie together. How much would you recommend this one? If I know Simon the way I think I do, he really loves this movie.
Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. Well, another Halloween is upon us yet again. Trick-or-treaters may or may not be out due to the pandemic. People are watching Halloween specials on the television. But do you know what some people really associate Halloween with? Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo, created by Hanna-Barbera Productions, started its run in 1969, airing with many cartoons, TV specials, some big screen movies and various spin-offs. And it's needless to say that Scooby-Doo has become one of the most popular and most profitable franchises from Hanna-Barbera, since it's the one that gets adapted the most.
Well, obviously.
And this year, Warner Brothers came out with a brand new, should have been big screen movie that went straight to streaming film, titled Scoob. Scoob is a 2020 American computer-animated supernatural adventure mystery comedy film produced by Warner Animation Group and based on Hanna-Barbera's Scooby-Doo franchise. The movie is set up to be the start of a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe, since Warner Brothers didn't really do a great job with the DC Extended Universe. So they thought, let's try again with Hanna-Barbera. It was originally set for a worldwide theatrical release in May 15, 2020. But it was sent straight to digital streaming due to the COVID-19 pandemic closing all the cinemas in the world. So can Scoob hold up the legacy of Mystery Inc. as well as Hanna-Barbera in general? Let's take a look and find out. A young Shaggy Rogers befriends and adopts a talking stray dog, whom he names Scooby-Dooby-Doo. On Halloween night, Scooby and Shaggy meet three young detectives named Fred Jones, Daphne Blake and Velma Dinkley before venturing into a haunted house. Inside, the kids encounter a ghost, whom they capture and unmask as a costume thief, Mr. Rigby. Inspired by the experience, they decide to form a group, Mystery Inc., to solve mysteries together. 10 years later, Mystery Inc. goes into business with entrepreneur Colossal Prick, Simon Cowell, as their investor. But Shaggy and Scooby are excluded as Cowell refuses to do business with them. Later that night, Shaggy and Scooby are attacked at the bowling alley by small robots called Rottens. The pair are rescued by Dee Dee Sykes, Dynamite, and a masked superhero Blue Falcon. The Rottens are then revealed to belong to supercriminal Dick Dastardly, who wants to capture Scooby-Doo as part of a plan involving the mystery behind 3 Skulls of Cerberus. Meanwhile, Fred, Daphne, and Velma discover that Scooby and Shaggy are with Blue Falcon before Dastardly imprisons them. Escaping with the help of one of the Rottens, they make contact with Dee Dee via Dynamite. Velma explains that she and others are being taken to Messick Mountain, where the last skull is located. The group finds out that Dastardly's plans are to open the gates to the underworld in order to rescue his dog Muttley, who was trapped during an attempt to steal the underworld's riches, and Dastardly needs Scooby-Doo because he is the only one who can unlock the gates. And all this leads to a wacky superhero adventure with various Hanna-Barbera characters including Dynamite, Blue Falcon, and Captain Caveman, to name a few. So what do I think of Scooby-Doo's newest movie? I love it to bits. When I first saw a poster for this movie in the cinema, I remember thinking to myself, oh great, another movie that we never asked for. But I was still kind of interested to go see it because I did grow up with Scooby-Doo and I was kind of interested to see what the movie would be like. And after watching the trailers, it had me immediately hooked when they revealed Dick Dastardly to be the main villain because he's one of my favourite characters of all time. As I mentioned earlier, this was the start of a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe, where Warner Brothers decided to try and make a cinematic universe starring Hanna-Barbera characters, and it made sense to start with Scooby-Doo since he's the most profitable character in the Hanna-Barbera lineup. And speaking of characters, this movie is not shy of them. You have Shaggy and Scooby-Doo voiced by Frank Welker and Will Forte, two best friends and cowards who love Scooby snacks and like to goof off every now and then. Scooby is the only character to be voiced by one of the original voice actors, Frank Welker. While it is very weird that Frank Welker is the only original Scooby-Doo actor who comes in to voice the character, I think it does the film justice. He's the lovable mutt who's afraid of a lot of things and gets involved in this big adventure with his best friend Shaggy Rogers. And Shaggy, like Scooby, is a coward, and like Scooby, he loves to eat and loves to goof off every now and then. But the two have a great way of using disguises to get out of various situations. And I've heard that Shaggy's current voice actor, Matthew Lillard, was quite upset that he didn't get asked to play the character. And I have to admit, I thought it was a missed opportunity too, because he's been voicing the character for a while and we practically know him as Shaggy now. But to Will Forte's credit, he does do a pretty good job at bringing out Shaggy's voice, sounding very much like Shaggy at moments, except for a lot of emotional moments. But all in all, he does do a pretty decent job. Out of all the actors to play Mystery Inc., Will Forte does try his best to voice Shaggy. And in most parts, his voice is almost identical to the original.
Do you realize where we are? No. Look around, man. The clean, modern aesthetic, the cool blue color palette. We're in
IKEA.
The Falcon Fury. Did you say IKEA?
Nope, I said Falcon Fury, just like you.
There's Velma, Fred and Daphne, the other members of Mystery Inc., with Velma being the brains of the operation, Fred being the leader, and Daphne the one that usually gets kidnapped. Of course, we don't see them in the film as much as Shaggy and Scooby, but they do their job as supporting characters. And one thing I find quite funny in this movie is how Fred seems to be in love with the Mystery Machine. Now, I have yet to see him have a crush on the Mystery Machine in any other Scooby-Doo media that I've watched. Or maybe I just haven't been seeing the right ones just yet. There's Brian, aka Blue Falcon, the son and the successor of the original Blue Falcon. Now bear in mind, when I first saw this version of Blue Falcon in the trailers, I remember thinking to myself, this isn't the Blue Falcon I remember. But then they managed to justify it by writing in it as the original Blue Falcon's son. Now he's the kind of guy who's trying to live up to the legacy of his father, but just can't really succeed at it and is kind of a goofball. Part of it is the fact that Mark Wahlberg voiced him, and he has a knack for voicing goofball characters like in Ted. And with his sidekick Dynamite Dog Wonder being the brains of the operation, it's kind of like the whole role reversal gag. Because if most of you can remember from the original Blue Falcon cartoons, Blue Falcon was the brains of the operation and Dynamite was the goofball. But here it's the other way around. And as much as I miss the old goofy, idiotic Dynamite, I have to admit I do like how snarky this version of Dynamite is, poking fun at how numbskullish and full of himself Brian can be at times. There's Dee Dee Sykes, the aide of the Blue Falcon who pilots the Falcon Fury. For those of you who don't remember who Dee Dee Sykes is, she was one of the main characters in the Captain Caveman show, and she's the second brains of the operation compared to Blue Falcon, the one who pilots the ship and the only other one of the group besides Dynamite that takes the mission seriously. And as a special treat, they've thrown in Captain Caveman, a fur-covered caveman superhero who resides in Messick Mountain. Most people were introduced to Captain Caveman via the TV show that he was originally created for. But the first time I ever saw the character was in the Flintstones Kids, where he and his son was the cartoon within the cartoon show. And while he doesn't speak in the same mannerisms as Mel Blanc did in the original cartoons, Tracy Morgan does give a likeable charm to the character. And it's great that they got him to say the famous catchphrase. While this movie showcases some other great Hanna-Barbera characters besides Mystery Inc., for me the highlight of the movie was Dick Dastardly.
Nobody gets away from Dick Dastardly.
A criminal mastermind plotting to obtain treasure from the Greek underworld and rescue his dog Muttley. Dick Dastardly, as most of you will remember, will come from Wacky Races and Dastardly and Muttley in their flying machines. As soon as the second trailer for the movie announced Dick Dastardly was going to be the main villain, it immediately had me hooked. Because Dick Dastardly is one of my favourite villains of all time, as well as one of my favourite Hanna-Barbera characters. And as I was hoping, he still maintains that likeable personality that made him so much fun to watch in the original cartoons. And Jason Isaacs from the Harry Potter films just brings the character to life so superbly.
Join me, Scooby-Doo, and I will show you how to harness your destiny and become the most important dog in the world. No thanks, Dastardly. Oh, please. My friends call me Dick. Okay. Rick? No, I'm not a Rick. I'm a Dick with a D. Rick with a D. Da-da-da, Dick. Well, Rick. Dick!
Good night, everybody.
And there's even been one moment where I've detected a little bit of the original actor Paul Winchell in his voice.
Double dress.
Every time Dastardly appeared on screen, he practically stole the movie, just like he did in the Wacky Races cartoon. This guy's just a delight to watch every second he's on screen. An extra nice touch with Dastardly is the fact that his ship looks exactly like the Mean Machine from Wacky Races. It's just awesome that they would go out of their way to make his airship look like his racing car. And while his dog sidekick Muttley doesn't have a big role in the film, his role is very vital. Here's an interesting bit of trivia about Muttley in this movie. For a majority of his dialogue, Billy West did his voice, but for the laughing they just used archive recordings of Don Messick. Which I honestly think makes sense because several other actors have tried to mimic that laugh, but none of them have quite succeeded, so it only makes sense to use the original recordings for the original actor. And that's the same thing they did with Snoopy when they did the Peanuts movie. Use archive recordings of the original actor rather than trying to get someone to imitate him. And in some cases that usually works to his advantage because, like I said, some actors just can't get to those voices the same level that the originals did. And who knows, we could get more Dastardly and Muttley in a future Hanna-Barbera film. And I really hope so because Dastardly stole the movie for me. And working alongside Dastardly are the Vottons, a gang of robots created by Dastardly that could transform into anything. They start off with this sweet and adorable appearance that makes them look like babies, but they can turn into these scorpion-like creatures with chainsaws and lasers, and even have the ability to disguise themselves as bowling balls and bowling pins. It's one of those wacky robots that looks sweet and innocent at first, but then when it shows its true colours it's really threatening. I mean, their personalities aren't that threatening, I mean they're still the cutesy little robots, but they're definitely not to be underestimated when they're working for Dick Dastardly. This of course wouldn't be a great Hanna-Barbera movie if they didn't throw in some great Hanna-Barbera references to previous shorts that they've done. Like if you look very carefully in the background you can see a few nods to other characters and people who worked on the original cartoons. Like the lady who works at the bowling alley that's named after the famous designer of Scooby-Doo, Iro Takamoto. And Messick Mountain was named after Don Messick, the original voice of Muttley. And in one scene you can see a poster of the Hedgehogs, who were first introduced in Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. There's even a Hong Kong Furry arcade game, that's just a nice touch. And even throw in a Banana Splits poster not far away from the Hedgehogs poster. And as much as I hate the guy, Simon Cowell playing himself in the movie is a great nod to the new Scooby-Doo movies, where they'd have various celebrities and famous characters appear in the mysteries. In the first 10 minutes where we see Scooby and the gang as kids, there's a nice little callback to a pup named Scooby-Doo. Just a few touches like that just makes this a really nice Hanna-Barbera movie, in my opinion. Being set in the modern day world, then you'd obviously expect to see this have references to modern day things like say IKEA and Netflix.
And apparently he's been stealing Netflix by using his mother's account. That is not fair for the rest of us who have to pay for Netflix.
You have to pay for Netflix?
But one of my favourites is when they're on the Falcon Fury and Scooby mistakes it for IKEA. Being someone who's visited IKEA regularly, I just find that amusing. And speaking of references, I'm very sure that Hall of Mirrors scene where Dastardly confronts Scooby-Doo is based on Batman the Killing Joke. It just looks very similar to me. While this movie is animated in CGI, it does do its best to make it traditional cartoon slapstick. But maybe at times it could get a little too cartoony. I can see why that would have worked better with 2D animation. Now this movie had quite a fair bit of criticism from some of the viewers, saying that it didn't feel like a Scooby-Doo movie after the first 10 minutes. And I can understand where they're coming from. I mean, when you watch the first 10 minutes of the movie, it is like watching a Scooby-Doo episode. Then the rest of the film just turns into a wacky superhero film, where Scooby-Doo and the gang thrown into the mix. But I honestly don't mind that, because it takes the gang and gives them a different adventure to go on besides just a man in a mask and pretending to be a monster or a ghost. And I think some people forget that we've had some Scooby-Doo films and projects with different stories in the past, like Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island having the zombies and monsters be real. So in all honesty, I think it's a nice change to have the gang go on this big adventure that's different from a ghost that's actually a man in a mask. Now some people may disagree with me, but I personally think it's a welcome change. And it does a good job of setting up this Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. And despite what some people have said about it, it's still a better cinematic universe film than Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice. Scoob is a film that takes what we love about Scooby-Doo and Dick Dastardly and Muttley and various Hanna-Barbera characters and merges it into one film that makes a Kickstarter for a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. And while it's not one of the best movies I've ever seen, I think it does its job really well. But my main criticism of it is that I never got to watch it in the cinemas. Because it was intended to be shown on the big screen, I think we would have all gotten a better experience of it. My guess is Warner Brothers didn't want to risk delaying it for too long and losing the hype for it. But it's great that we still got to see it and it didn't get delayed multiple times like the James Bond movie or The Kingsman, two other films that I really want to go see next year. So in my opinion, Scoob is a great way to introduce us to a new Hanna-Barbera cinematic franchise, reintroducing us to the original Mystery Inc. gang, bringing in some Hanna-Barbera characters that are long forgotten, and bringing them into a great story which is very entertaining. So if you want a fun Hanna-Barbera film, then Scoob is definitely the one to go to. Not one of the best Hanna-Barbera movies, but one of the best Hanna-Barbera movies that we've gotten in a while. It shows a majority of the characters you love, and some characters that you may have forgotten about that could be introduced to a new generation. And if you haven't seen this movie yet, I'd highly recommend checking it out if you're a Hanna-Barbera fan, Scooby-Doo fan, or Fanimation fan in general. You'll get some laughs out of it, you'll have a nice time watching Scooby and the gang go off on this big adventure. And if you're a lover of wacky races like I am, then you'll be delighted at the antics Dick Dastardly gets up to. It's a fun animated film that I feel is worth a watch. I hope you all have a very happy Halloween, folks, whatever you decide to do this year. I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks.
Double dress. Notice.
Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. And I got a new Apple Mac. So any new videos you'll see from now on will be in high definition. Thanks to the good old Apple Mac. But anyway, as you all know, we have a crazy pandemic going on, so just to pass the time, I've been binge watching various shows and movies I love. Very recently I rewatched an old classic, the Lego Batman movie. Being the second entry to the Lego movie franchise, the Lego Batman movie had a lot to live up to, and it managed to meet the high standards that most people wanted to see from this movie. With the same type of humour, the same animation team, as well as Will Arnett's Lego Batman taking up the spotlight. And there's rumours of a possible sequel that's coming out, but we're not sure about it yet since Universal now own the franchise, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So it's needless to say, this movie has become one of the most popular movies in the Lego movie series, argued by many to be the best movie to come out of the franchise, and I'd be lying if I didn't say I'd agree with them. It had a great sense of humour like the first movie, and it did a great job at capturing Will Arnett's Batman. But what makes this movie so great? What makes it so memorable, hilarious, and all around a great movie in the Lego movie franchise? Well, I'm going to look at the top 10 of them here tonight. So sit back and enjoy my top 10 reasons why the Lego Batman movie is so awesome. Number 10. The animation. Yeah, I know I put the animation in the same place since my first Lego movie, Great Moments list, but it's just so great that I had to put it at number 10. From the first scene in this movie, you can already tell that the animation has been updated compared to the first Lego movie, while still keeping to the traditional animation style of the Lego movie. It takes the same style from the first Lego movie, but ups it a notch, with improved textures, keeping up that stop motion feeling that you get from it, and adding a couple of non-Lego effects to it, like water and smoke. Now some might say that this is cheating, since everything in the first Lego movie besides the relics and the real world were all made out of Lego, but this just adds to the imagination that this probably takes place in a different type of world within Finn's basement, somewhere that's not one of the sets that was already made by Finn's father. And there's so many little touches in the animation that really makes it worthwhile. Like every time Batman's mood changes, his cowl seems to change with whatever facial expression he's making. Something that was never done in the original Lego movie. And I'm still wondering why they never made anything like this for Lego Batman movie sets. I mean seriously, I want to see LEGO Batman minifigures with those kind of cowls. The animation for the first LEGO movie didn't disappoint me, and it didn't disappoint for the LEGO Batman movie, with some updated textures, some great stop motion feelings, and just all around great animation that makes you come back for it again and again.
Whoa! You're darn right, whoa.
Number 9. The Rogues Gallery. This movie has the most Batman villains I've ever seen in a movie. And that's funny coming from a guy who's watched Batman the Animated Series episodes like Almost Got Him in the Trial, where they have multiple villains in the same room. But this one just seems to showcase all of the major villains in Batman's history. Like the Joker as the main villain, Harley Quinn, Two-Face, Poison Ivy, the Penguin, Bane, Catwoman, Mr. Freeze, and many others. They even managed to bring in a lot of the obscure Batman villains that mainly showed up in the Adam West TV series and the animated series. The Rogues Gallery in the LEGO Batman movie is so huge that you may literally have to pause the movie just to see which other villains you may find in it besides the ones that were named. And the majority of them you had to be a die-hard DC Comics reader to even get first time round. And Batman rogues weren't the only rogues that were part of the Rogues Gallery in this movie. We also had rogues from other franchises that came from the Phantom Zone in the movie. When we got to visit the Phantom Zone, they showed many other villains that didn't even come from Batman or DC, like the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz, Voldemort from Harry Potter, the Eye of Sauron from The Lord of the Rings, and the Daleks from Doctor Who, as well as many others. And I was immediately surprised and super hyped when they revealed that the Daleks were going to be part of this movie, even though they never referred to them by their real name.
British robots! Ask your nerd friends.
Deals with the BBC, I guess. Nonetheless, it was awesome to see so many Batman villains as well as non-Batman villains in this movie. It just adds to the great imagination and creativity that this movie series had to offer, and it shows that the team did a lot of research in bringing these characters to the big screen. Good job on your mates.
Okay, are you making some of those up?
Nope, they're all real. Probably worth the Google.
Number 9. The Batman references. Being a parody of Batman, it's no surprise that they would have many references to the Caped Crusader, from the comic books to the TV shows and previous movies.
I've seen him go through similar phases in 2016 and 2012 and 2008 and 2005, 1997, 1995, 1992 and 1989, and that weird one in 1966.
And these references are scattered all over the place, like the various incarnations of Batman that have showed up over the years, from the Adam West TV series to the animated shows and the previous movies. They even throw in a bit of a jab at the Suicide Squad movie. References to the Caped Crusader are all over the place in this movie, and the majority of them you have to be a die-hard DC fan to even get first time round. And in my opinion, one of the best references to the Caped Crusader is casting Billy D. Williams as Two-Face, who previously played Harvey Dent in Tim Burton's original Batman movie. There's even been rumoured that if Tim Burton wasn't replaced by Joel Schumacher, then Billy D. Williams may have returned to Batman Returns as Two-Face instead of casting Tommy Lee Jones. Little touches like that just makes this a really great movie to watch. And even the opening scene with the plane heist is a great reference to The Dark Knight Rises, as well as a great action scene showcasing the Joker as well as all the other DC villains. Unlike with the Rogues Gallery, you'd probably have to watch this movie several times to get all of the references, and you'd even have to be a die-hard Batman fan to get them first time round. But as well as having references to the comics, it just has references to the movies and the TV series, so it's a movie for every Batman fan out there, young and old.
Batman, what are you doing? You're completely outnumbered here. Are you nuts?
You want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
Number 7. The action. It comes as no surprise that being a Batman movie, we'd see a lot of action scenes, with Batman kicking bad guys' asses. But what makes the action scenes so great for me is that we don't see Batman fighting off just one villain. In each action scene for this movie, it's very rare that you see Batman fighting off one villain. He always has to fight off a whole gang of villains. And that just adds to the awesomeness of the action scenes.
I don't currently have a bad guy. I am fighting a few different people. I like to fight around.
Every battle he has, he's always fighting a gang of villains. Like the whole DC Rogues Gallery and every villain that comes from the Phantom Zone. There's never a moment where he has to fight off just one villain. Every villain always comes at him in one go. Every great Batman movie has to have great action scenes, and this movie has plenty of them.
Batman, what are you doing?
Punching Bane.
That was unnecessary.
Number 6. The soundtrack. Every Batman movie has to have a kick-ass soundtrack to it. And this movie certainly has that, with Lorne Balfe composing the music as well as some various songs throughout the movie. And the movie just seems to have a Danny Elfman / Hans Zimmer feeling to it every now and then. The soundtrack has a good selection of songs in it that already existed, as well as new tracks made for the movie, like the Friends or Family song and Batman's Who's the Batman song, and especially the way they do the music throughout the movie. Like, a lot of the music scores just sound like they've taken some inspiration from the previous Batman films, mainly the Burton and Nolan films, and they write in 2 brand new songs for it, like Who's the Batman, taking reference to the Adam West Batman theme, and Friends or Family at the very end of the film, being a nice light-hearted song. As I said, every great Batman movie has to have a great soundtrack, and this movie definitely has a great soundtrack.
This music is filling me with rage. Let's use it.
Number 5. Robin. This version of Robin, played by Michael Cera, is the cutest version of Robin I've ever seen, being this wacky, lovable and gullible orphan that just wants to have a family, and is a huge fan of Bruce Wayne as well as Batman.
Does Batman live in Bruce's basement?
No, Bruce Wayne lives in Batman's attic.
This version of Robin is quite geeky, but also adorable in its own way. Every time you see him on screen, you just want to give him a hug or something. He's that delightful. And what I love about this version of Dick Grayson is how enthusiastic he is and how willing he is to be in Batman's shoes and follow on in his adventures, no matter how dangerous or life-threatening it may be.
Hello, secret camera.
And he's the kind of orphan who's just happy to have parents and be parented. Like when Batman scolds him, he doesn't react like a spoiled kid would, like, "Oh, you're the worst dad ever." He reacts so gleefully like he's never had this kind of scolding before. So it's just a joy to him that he's being parented. If only more kids were like him. So this version of the Boy Wonder is a joy to watch, and we won't be forgetting him anytime soon.
The only trouble is, his pants are just a little tight. I don't know if I could throw a kick or jump in them. I got an idea. It's better. Now I'm free, now I'm moving. Come on, Batman, let's get grooving.
I can only look you in the eyes right now.
Number 4. Connections to the Lego Movie. Being the second entry to the Lego Movie franchise, it seems like a no-brainer that we'd have connections from the first Lego Movie pop up in this one, like them mentioning the eternal abyss of nothingness from the first movie, even showing a clip of Emmett falling into the abyss, and the fact that Batman is a master builder and he teaches Robin how to master build. Adding those little connections to the first Lego Movie is a great way to remind us that this Batman takes place within Finn's basement. And just the little nods to it, like, say, the eternal abyss of nothingness and the fact that Batman's a master builder, just adds to this universe. And if you listen very carefully in the scene where Harley Quinn beats up 2 officers in the Arkham Asylum's lift, then you'll hear Everything Is Awesome playing in the background. While every entry in a movie franchise has to have references to their previous films, this one doesn't disappoint with its connections to the first film. Number 3. Batman. Like with the animation, I know I put Batman on the list in my first Lego Movie top 10 list, but he's just such a delight to watch in this movie that I had to put him on this list again. Now, I've talked many times about how awesome Batman is in the Lego Movie franchise from my previous reviews, but the movie just adds to his awesomeness and how hilarious he is at the same time. And with good reason. Will Arnett's version of the Caped Crusader is one of the most funny versions I've ever seen in media. He fights crime, loves beating up bad guys, and is very arrogant and self-centered at times. But this movie explores his personality more and shows us why he is self-loving and so full of himself all the time. It turns out that his massive ego is just to hide the fact that he's afraid of losing people that he loves again.
I don't talk about feelings. I don't have any. I've never seen one. I'm a night-stalking, crime-fighting vigilante and a heavy metal rapping machine. I don't feel anything emotionally except for rage. 24/7, 365, at 1,000,000%. And if you think that there's something behind that, then you're crazy.
It's just to hide the pain and sorrow that he feels in his heart. But he's afraid of being a part of a family and afraid to show his emotions, which makes us root for him in the movie and understand why he's being such a jerk to everyone around him. And even though he is being a jerk most of the time, he's just so hilarious and full of himself that you can't help but love him at the same time. Will Arnett's Batman is a great addition to the LEGO Movie franchise, and a Caped Crusader that we won't be forgetting anytime soon.
I really don't need anyone at any time, ever, because I'm totally awesome, and Batman works alone.
Number 2. The Joker. Being Batman's greatest enemy, it was a no-brainer that the Clown Prince of Crime was going to be the main villain in the LEGO Batman movie. And Zach Galifianakis' performance is just so superb and memorable, being the most child-friendly version of the clown. And if most people don't know this guy, he was in the Hanover movies, as well as Humpty Dumpty in the Puss in Boots movie by DreamWorks.
I'm inside your head. No, you're not. I knew you'd say that. No, you didn't. And I knew you'd say that. See? We aren't so different, I and you. It's you and I.
Aside from Cesar Romero's Joker from the Adam West TV series, this has to be the most child-friendly Joker I've ever seen in a while. Since most versions you see him, he's still a psychotic killer who's not really allowed to kill, but just does horrific things anyway. But this one seems to be the most child-friendly in my opinion. And the guy's charm just shines through this version of the Joker. Being Batman's arch-enemy, who is also known as the Clown Prince of Crime, and just wanting Batman to admit that he's his greatest enemy, and be appreciated by him as a villain. But no matter what Joker does, he just doesn't seem to get the full appreciation of their relationship from Batman. And he'll go to any great and dangerous lengths just to show that he's Batman's greatest enemy. And the way they play out his obsession in the movie makes him seem like an obsessive fan or over-obsessive boyfriend or something like that. He's just hilarious.
I am not going to be part of a one-sided relationship any longer. You and I are done. I'm moving on. And on my way out, I'm going to blow up Gotham City.
And playing the Clown Prince of Crime, Zach had big shoes to fill since many big actors played the character before him, like Cesar Romero, Jack Nicholson, Mark Hamill, Heath Ledger, and Jared Leto. And then later on we get a great performance from Joaquin Phoenix in Joker. But I think Zach did a great job at bringing the Joker to life in the LEGO version of the Caped Crusaders adventures. So all those reasons makes this version of the Clown Prince of Crime so memorable in my opinion.
It's gotta be one or the other, Batman. Save the city or catch your greatest enemy. You can't do both.
And the number one awesome moment from the LEGO Batman movie is... it's a great celebration of the Caped Crusader. As I mentioned before, this movie does a great job at bringing in so many references to the Caped Crusader from the movies, the TV shows and the comics. This movie just proves to be a great parody of Batman as well as a great celebration to his adventures, making references to all the incarnations that have existed in the past, pointing out the good parts of the franchise and the bad parts of the franchise. And as I mentioned, they do a great jab at the Suicide Squad film. Even though I do quite enjoy that movie, I find that their joke to it is really funny. And even though it's a Batman film, it has to be child friendly because it's a family film. And it sees it being a great family film as well as a great celebration of the Batman. It's just a movie that you could watch several times over and over and just get all the references to the Batman franchise. And it's one of the most popular films in the LEGO Movie franchise as well, being a lot of people's number one on their lists. And it's my most favourite as well, having rewatched it several times. The movie plays out as a great Batman movie, a great parody of Batman, and a great celebration of the Caped Crusader, with all the references that they do to many of the incarnations of him, like from the comics, the TV shows and the movies. It just goes all out to remind us of Batman's great legacy. So with all the great references to the Caped Crusader, the great characters, the great music, and all the other things I've listed in this list, all these things is why the LEGO Batman movie is such an awesome movie as well as an awesome addition to the LEGO Movie franchise. And as we know ages ago, Warner Brothers confirmed that they'd be working on a sequel to this movie. But the future of it's uncertain since Universal now own the rights to the LEGO Movie franchise. So we're just going to have to wait and see if the LEGO Batman Movie 2 does come out. And if it does, I'm sure it'll be as great a celebration to the Caped Crusader as this movie is. And this and more is why the LEGO Batman movie is such an awesome movie, as well as an awesome addition to the LEGO Movie franchise. And those are the 10 reasons why I think the LEGO Batman movie is so awesome. Do you have any reasons of your own for why the LEGO Batman movie is awesome? Well, put them down in the comments section below and get your words out there. I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks.
We aren't so different, I and you.
It's you and I! Yeah!
No pics.
Sorry.
Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. Upon continuing my binge watching throughout lockdown during the pandemic, I came across this animated marvel.
Cramped inside this time and space. May sound bad, but ain't the case in the loud house.
Yes, during the lockdown, thanks to the wonders of the streaming service known as Netflix, I was introduced to this little Nickelodeon show called The Loud House. It began airing in the 2nd of May 2016 and goes strong to this day. The show follows Lincoln Loud, the only boy and the middle child of a family of 11 children residing in the fictional town of Royal Woods, Michigan. He has 10 sisters with distinctive personalities consisting of bossy eldest sister Lori, ditzy fashion expert Lenny, musician Luna, comedian Luann, athletic Lynn Jr., gloomy poetic goth Lucy, polar opposite twins Lana and Lola, child genius Lisa, and baby Lily. Lincoln occasionally breaks the fourth wall to explain to the viewers the chaotic conditions and sibling relationships of the household, and continually devises plans to make his life in the Loud House better. The first 4 seasons of the show centered around the kids going about their everyday lives. When the 5th season, the Loud siblings were aged up to a year, with Laurie going to Fairway College, Lincoln going to middle school, and Lily going to preschool. Having watched many episodes of the show, I can honestly say that this is one of the best things to come from Nickelodeon for a long time. And that's very funny coming from a guy who mostly grew up with Disney Channel and Cartoon Network. This whole idea of big families living together really reminds me of the Home Alone films. The original ones, I mean, not those crappy sequels from 3 to 5, where you have a big family where they all argue with each other, but in the end they're still family and the spirit of Christmas shines through. That's pretty much the same with the Loud House, except it's all the year round. Just seeing these family members working off their different personalities, getting into squabbles with each other, but in the end making up with each other. Because as I said, they're family. The main element of the show that makes it so memorable and fun to watch for kids and even some adults is the characters. Mostly the Loud family. The focus at the start is Lincoln Loud, 11-year-old, now 12-year-old boy with white hair. He is the middle child and the only son of the Loud family. A recurring trait throughout the series involves Lincoln breaking the fourth wall by talking to the audience about surviving with all his sisters, as well as considering himself a man with a plan. He tries to give helpful advice when dealing with sibling relationships. The opening theme song for the show always makes it seem like Lincoln's going to be the main focus of the entire show, but that's not always the case. Okay, we do get a lot of episodes where he's the main focus, but the majority of the other episodes are usually him surviving with his sisters, getting along with his sisters by bonding with them, and other times they do focus on the other siblings. It could have been easy for them to have just made the show all about Lincoln Loud, like the title song describes. I mean, it talks about how Lincoln's one boy in a family of 10 girls. But they go out of their way to focus on every Loud in the show. And that's just a part of what makes the show so memorable. There's Laurie Loud, the eldest sibling. In the first season, she mostly comes off as bossy and kind of a bitch towards her siblings, especially Lincoln. But as the show goes on, she does start to simmer down a bit and show a little bit more love and respect for her siblings. Lenny Loud is the second child of the Loud family. She's mentally challenged but compassionate and physically strong and curious in the way of the show. While she may not be smart, she's very smart when it comes to fashion. I mean, if you ever have a fashion question, then Lenny's always the one to go to. And her voice actress has one hell of a set of lungs. One of my favourite siblings, Luna Loud, is the 15-year-old child who loves rock and roll. Every time you see her, she's either rocking out with her guitar or making references to various songs that existed in the past.
I fought the law, and the law won. We don't need no education! Dude, I'm hungry like the wolf.
Luna's a character that I can also relate to because she loves rock and roll, and I'm a great lover of big bands like Shed 7. can relate to her love of rock and roll. And damn is her singing voice beautiful.
Thank you, baby, for helping me.
That's voice actress Nika Futterman voicing her, and damn does she have a beautiful voice. Every time she shows up or is the main focus of the episode, you know that it's going to be good when we see her.
I know it's only rock and roll, but I like it.
Luann is the only one that I find the least interesting, since her character trait is mostly being a comedian and telling really bad jokes, and she does a lot of practical jokes, especially around April Fool's Day. But this trait could get really old really fast for some people, but some fans can get a good laugh out of her with her bad jokes, so some people might like her, but I find her the least interesting of the bunch. Lynn Loud Jr. is the sporty kind of girl who loves competing for various sports, like say basketball, baseball, hockey, you name it. She even gets super competitive when it comes to board games, gloating over her victories to the siblings, which can get on their nerves. And I can understand that, since I've played games with various people that can be too competitive as well. There's Lucy Loud, the goth sister that loves vampires. She has this running gag where she just pops up out of nowhere, which often frightens her siblings. And if you love goth girls and all that stuff, then you're really going to get into this character. Another one of my favourite siblings, Lana Loud, voiced by famous actress Grey Griffin, who loves getting dirty and animals. Lana was the first Loud to make me really get into this show. I just love how boyish she is and not very girlish she is with her antics. She mostly loves to play in the mud and get her hands dirty, and she's a real whiz when it comes to unclogging the toilet and fixing up Fanzilla, the family's van. And she has a really good relationship with animals, especially her friend Hops the Frog. There's her twin sister Lola Loud, also voiced by Grey Griffin, who comes across as kind of a spoilt brat kind of kid who likes to get her own way. But she is more than that, and she's a girl that likes to enter talent show passions and loves dressing up for occasions. And she can also get kind of insane when she doesn't get her way.
No, please, Mr. Pirate, I don't mean no harm.
And one of my favourite reactions from Lola is this. Now, I don't know if any girl out there goes this gaga over glitter, but all I know is it's funny as hell. There's Lisa Loud, the girl genius of the family, who loves dabbing into inventions. It's funny how the parents let her dabble with inventions and chemicals and yet won't let her use a butter knife. She tends to be pretty reckless with her experiments and forcibly getting samples from her family members. That's not at all disturbing. And my other favourite Loud is Baby Lily, also voiced by Grey Griffin. During the first 4 seasons, she used to have this habit of losing her diaper, causing her to go naked and also causing her fellow siblings to put her diaper back on. In the first 4 seasons, she usually spoke gibberish as babies do when they're still getting used to their words, but her most common word was poo-poo. And Lincoln and Luna are usually the ones that hang out with her the most, looking after her, changing her, feeding her, you name it. Lily's another one of those sweet, adorable characters that you just can't help but love. And it's not always easy to make a baby interested in shows these days. In some cases, babies wouldn't be the most interesting characters in these kind of shows, but because she's so adorable, you can't help but love her. From the 5th season onwards, she now speaks in some sentences referring to herself in the 3rd person, so it's nice to show that the siblings do get older in this cartoon show. Something that The Simpsons really should be doing. Yeah, I went there. Then you have the parents, Lynn Loud Sr. and Rita. Lynn owns his own restaurant, as he's a whiz at cooking, and you can see where some of the siblings get some of their traits from. For example, Laurie getting over dramatic about things, Luann's bad jokes, Luna's love for music, so on and so forth. And Rita is very caring towards the children, but is not afraid to punish them if their fighting goes too far. One interesting thing about these two is the fact that in the first season you never see their faces. All you see is their bodies and the lower parts of their faces, but you never see their actual faces. Then from season 2 onwards, they started to show their faces more often. My guess is in the first season they couldn't think of any stories where the parents would have a big role, but from season 2 onwards they play a big role in some episodes. And we have a whole range of other characters like Clyde McBride, Lincoln's best friend, Ronnie Ann, Lincoln's other best friend, and many others. What makes these characters all stand out in this show, especially the minor characters, is the fact that they're all identifiable. I mean, we even knew a lot of these characters at some point in our lives, or at some point in our lives were at least one of the characters. Each of them is identifiable and relatable because we've all seen people like that in our lives. Like we've all seen the elderly, bold, grumpy neighbour Mr. Grouse, played by Bender the Robot, the cheap, smug, rip-off artist gas station owner Flip, also voiced by Bender the Robot. And that's just one of the charms of this show. Every character is identifiable because they'll all represent someone we've come across in our lives, or represent how we used to be in our lives. The show is currently in its 5th season, with a spin-off series titled The Casa Grande starring Lincoln's friend Ronnie Ann, and a feature-length film will be developed and released on Netflix in 2021. Another thing that makes this show stand out for me is the great plot lines they come up with. Each episode of the show has the Loud family members, or at least a few of the Loud family members, going through some various situations that we would go through in everyday life. Of course, they add some cartoony antics to it, as you'd expect from a cartoon series. But most of the things they go through in the episodes is just something that we all go through in our lives, like trying to find your parents the perfect gift, getting along with your siblings, and so on and so forth. Another one of the best elements of this show is that they often take the time to have Lincoln bond with his sisters. And that's great, in my opinion. The Loud House is one of those shows that you can really have a great time watching and think to yourself, yeah, I've been through that once in my lifetime. Because each character is identifiable, and all the scenarios they get up to is just some of the things that we often get up to in our lives or had gone through in our lives. And those are just every bit of appeal to the show, in my opinion. The characters, the storylines, and the great relationships that they have, and the fact that each sibling represents one of us or someone that we knew. Not to mention it's one of the best shows that Nickelodeon has ever come up with in years. I mean, we all remember how good Rugrats and SpongeBob SquarePants was back in the day, but Rugrats ended and SpongeBob SquarePants isn't as good as it used to be. Much like the current Simpsons. The Loud House is definitely a fun animated show and a good watch if you want to find something to binge watch during the pandemic. And as I said, it's one of the best things to come out of Nickelodeon for years. And if you haven't seen The Loud House yet, I would highly recommend checking it out if you're a lover of animation. It's one of the best shows to come from Nickelodeon in a long time. You'll have a blast watching all of these characters get up to all kinds of crazy cartoonish antics, and you might be able to find a character or two that you can relate to or think back on how you used to be in your youth. So go ahead and check out The Loud House and see what you may have been missing out on. I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks.
Notice!
Hey guys, Dalek44 here. Welcome to Christmas 2020. Yeah, we all know the pandemic's still going on out there. But just because there's a pandemic going on, that doesn't mean we can't stop having Christmas fun, right? Yes, while the pandemic is going on, that doesn't stop us in trying to enjoy Christmas. That wonderful time of the year when people exchange gifts and peace on earth, goodwill to all men. And there's so many things to look forward around Christmas time. Presents, the snow, the decorations, the trees, the Christmas specials that come on TV, and of course waiting for Father Christmas, that jolly old fat man who brings presents to good boys and girls all around the world. And one of the most popular incarnations of the jolly old man himself is the vinyl Briggs version known as Father Christmas. Father Christmas is a British animated short starring the late Mel Smith as the titular character. Created for Channel 4 and first broadcast on Christmas Eve 1991 in Britain, the story is an adaptation of two books written by Raymond Briggs, Father Christmas and Father Christmas Goes on Holiday, and is the second adaptation of Briggs' work made for the channel, following the 1982 animated short The Snowman. Does this version of Jolly Old Saint Nick still hold up today? Let's find out. The story focuses on a stereotypical version of Father Christmas with a down-to-earth twist. Living in contemporary Britain with his pets and reindeer, coping with everyday domestic chores, who recounts to the viewers about a holiday he took before preparing for another Christmas. Following another annual Christmas Eve run, Father Christmas returns to his small house in contemporary Britain. While settling in, he comments to the viewers that, contrary to the popular belief, he is busy throughout the year caring for his reindeer and pets, tending to his gardens, shopping and doing housework, but decided on having a holiday a previous year to break from the constant cycle. He leaves his pet cat and dog in a kennel and takes a trip to France, but after having a French cuisine which causes him to become ill with food poisoning and diarrhea, he leaves France and goes off to Scotland. Father Christmas is initially happy to enjoy whiskey and wearing a kilt, but hates the weather he deals with on his arrival. He eventually goes on a luxurious holiday to a casino resort in Las Vegas, but is soon forced to return home when the kids begin questioning his identity, especially after noticing he is running low on funds and ranking up a huge hotel bill. Upon returning home, Father Christmas settles back into his house before heading to the kennels to pick up his pets. When he returns, he discovers letters addressed to him begin to arrive. He soon sets to work reading every letter that arrives and prepare for Christmas Eve. And then we follow him on his rounds of delivering presents all around the world before Christmas morning. So is this version of Father Christmas still worth watching every Christmas? Of course it is. This Father Christmas-centered story is very different from most Father Christmas stories that you'd seen in the past. Usually Father Christmas comes across as a jolly old man who loves children and loves giving. But here he comes across as a bit of a moaner who's got lots of things to complain about.
Oh, I know what you're thinking. Don't know what he's blooming well moaning about. Life of Riley. Bed of blooming roses. Wonder what he does with the other 364 days.
This version of Father Christmas can be a grumpy and miserable old git from time to time. But when you see his side of the story throughout the special, you can understand why he is grumpy from time to time. And despite his grumpy attitude during the special, he's still the jolly old Saint Nick that we know and love. And I think that's very identifiable for people who moan about pretty much everything that goes on in their lives. That's the late Mel Smith voicing the character, and you can tell that he's having a ton of fun voicing this version of jolly old Saint Nick. Just the dialogue that he comes out with is just so believable and so enjoyable.
That'll be another blooming awful tie from Auntie Edie. And here we have the usual ghastly blooming socks from Cousin Violet. But this will be more like it. Good old Uncle Bob. Bob?
And because we tend to go through some of the stuff that he goes through, especially when he goes on holiday, you can understand what he has to moan about. Especially if you're a hard worker in whatever job you do.
Pony? How did you think I'll get out on the sledge? Oh, think of something.
And it's really fun to see all the antics Father Christmas gets up to while he's on his different holidays. Seeing him in France, Scotland and Las Vegas. It's really fun to see him just relax and enjoy himself for a change. Because we're usually used to him working in his workshop all year round preparing toys for Christmas Eve with his elves. But in this one he doesn't have any elves, he does all the work himself as he lives in a house in England. And that again is very different for jolly old Saint Nick, since we usually associate him as living in the North Pole. But in my opinion that just adds to the Britishness of this story. The one thing I really love about this special is that it connects it to The Snowman that came out a few years before this, written by the same bloke. You remember that scene in The Snowman where the snowman and the boy go to a snowman party? Well, in this special, Father Christmas actually attends it, like he did in the original story.
Glad you could make it again. The party, I mean, not your snowman.
Having Santa be a part of the snowman party in the special is a great way to connect it to the snowman. Another great special that came before this story. That's hand-drawn animation in this, and you can really tell from every second and every frame. Like a lot of book adaptations at the time, it really seems like the characters from the pages just leapt out of the pages onto our TV screens. Book adaptations often had this tendency to create an art style that made it look like they came from the pages of the books, and that works really well in my opinion. Pretty much like with the original Mr. Men cartoons, it feels like the drawings from the books actually came to life. And that's usually the best kinds of things you could do in an adaptation from a book. And this shows that there must have been some supervision from the writers of the books, and it manages to stay faithful to the original stories. Father Christmas is a fun festive special that you can enjoy every Christmas. It's got great animation, great voice acting by the late Mel Smith, a great sense of humour, and it's just a nice little change from the usual Father Christmas versions we get every time of year, whether it be the holly jolly old Saint Nick that we all know and love, or whether it be a psychotic robot version of the character. It's just great to see a different take on Father Christmas, as we're used to seeing him be the holly jolly old Saint Nick that he's known for. So having him be the type of character he is in this special is a nice change of pace, and it's a great watch around Christmas time. So in my mind, Raymond Briggs' Father Christmas is a great Christmas story, and it's one that I'd highly recommend checking out every December, especially when you want to get into the Christmas feeling. And if you haven't seen this animated short yet, I would highly recommend checking it out around this time of year. You'll get a lot of entertainment out of it, you'll enjoy the art style, and you'll really get a laugh out of Mel Smith's Father Christmas. What else can I say other than it's a great way to help you get into the Christmas spirit, especially in these times.
Happy blooming Christmas to you and all.
I'm Dalek44, and Christmas 2020 has just begun. Cyber Unit D44 here, bringing you a villain file. Please excuse my cyber half. The cyber race will always survive. You will become like us. Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. Well, it's New Year's Eve 2020. The end of a shitty year and the start of a hopefully better one. Even though it's been a pretty bad year with the pandemic and whatnot, I think we all managed to make the best of a bad situation. I had a fun 30th birthday despite the absence of a party, Christmas was a day to remember as every year, and I even made a new friend in Little Miss Tiny.
I love this show. You and the kitty is so cute and funny.
Love that girl. But as 2020 draws to a close, I think that we shouldn't look back on how bad things have been this year, but look ahead to a future that will hopefully be better than everyone else and give us all hope. Hope that the pandemic will end sooner rather than later, hope that things will change for the better, and hope that... Who could that be? Not expecting any phone calls.
Simon? Are you alright? Simon?
Oh, God. What the hell was I drinking? Oh, my head feels like Donald Trump's living in it.
Simon, help me!
Greetings, Dalek44. It has been a long time.
Do I know you?
Oh, come now, my fleshy friend. Surely you recognize Cyber Unit 44.
Oh my God, Cyber Dalek. And don't call me Shirley.
Your human jokes are not designated amusing.
Well, I must say I'm surprised to see you. The last time we met, you were just a piece of cyber tech on my face, and getting it off hurt like hell, I can tell you.
And you made the mistake of keeping the technology within your possession. Removing it may have deactivated me, but a spark more dominant strengthened the power. It found the power source close by one night.
An iPhone?
Correct. Part of my programming transferred itself to the device while the other part remained. Tell me, Do you recall having bad dreams?
Well, only once after talking about the possibilities of a Cartoon Network streaming service. God, that was you?
Correct. The cyber technology transferred my remaining data into your mind.
And you were waiting for the right time to reanimate yourself using my phone and my mind.
This does not surprise you?
Well, when you watch Doctor Who for over 25 years, you do pick up on a lot of the sci-fi shit. And this is starting to feel like a sci-fi acid trip.
You irritate me.
Oh, very human. Still feeling emotions, are we? No inhibitor, I imagine.
Your hate and sarcasm is unwise. You want your little companion returned unharmed.
Is he really going to hurt me, Simon?
I'm not gonna lie, Miss Tiny. Very probably. He's part Cyberman, and Cybermen have no emotions. Obviously this one does. Probably got it from me, I'd say. Spent too much time in my head since my last trip to the Doctor Who experience in Cardiff. So far all he did was threaten to take over my body and convert every living thing into versions of himself.
I have done far more than that.
Surprise me.
I was the one who created the coronavirus.
What?
It was part of my mission to convert this planet to cyberform. Create the virus, persuading the population to upgrade in order to survive.
Ingenious. But one slight problem though.
Explain.
Well, while you were busy spreading the virus, you had no idea that the government was making plans to help stop the spread of it.
Your government's plans were doomed to fail from the start.
Tell me something I don't know. But you also didn't count on the best doctors and scientists in the UK and all around the world coming up with a vaccine to help stop the spread of the virus and to stop people from catching it. Nor did you anticipate every hospital in England distributing said vaccines to everyone in their local area, starting with the more vulnerable, then moving on to the others until everyone received the vaccinations.
It matters not. I have enough power to start a new virus deadlier than the last. All I need is your iPad device.
Well, you ain't getting it, mate. That thing cost me over £600.
You will surrender your device to me, or this one will be deleted.
Please, don't delete me. I'm too young, popular, and cute to die.
Cease talking. Surrender, or this one dies.
Have you no pity?
Correct.
Okay. This time you're about to be deleted by my cyborg doppelganger. No other option. Wait a minute. You said you transferred part of yourself into my iPhone, right?
Correct.
And if I'm correct, my phone still has enough of your data, meaning that I can do this.
What is this? Explain.
Cybertech connected to my iPhone, half Cyberman Funset tech equals cyber remote control.
My hero!
We can do this all evening. used the cyber technology on my iPhone to control Cyber Dalek's movements until he overloaded and blew up.
Oh, you're so clever. Sorry, I missed the line. Is it gone for good?
I hope so. Although knowing Cyberman, they always survive. So, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to delete the cyber tech from my iPhone, just in case it hacks anything.
Oh, you're so clever.
Well... Anyway, as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, let's hope that 2021 brings us a better year than we had last year. Hope things will go back to normal sooner rather than later, and most importantly, never give up on a good thing. Happy New Year to you all.
Happy New Year, Simon.
Happy New Year, Miss Tiny. But he didn't hear what they thought, for he was so tired and happy that he fell asleep at once. Keep forgetting, got me Kevin Jack there. I should be looking up this year.